sign. All right, will you join me, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance? We'll start with the roll call, please.
Supervisor Groom?
Present.
Supervisor Horsley?
Here.
Supervisor Slocum?
Here.
Supervisor Tissier?
Here.
President Pine?
Here. Well, welcome to the board meeting for Tuesday, January 28th. This is my first meeting as president of the board, so if things are messed up, don't be surprised. I would have preferred if a smaller audience had come for the first meeting. Kind of a warm-up meeting, you know. So I will proceed. I have experienced colleagues who will bail me out, no doubt. Our first item, as always, is public comment, where individuals can speak to items not on the agenda, and since they are not on the agenda, the board cannot typically respond to those items. So we have 4 speakers. We'll start with Ellen Wise, and each speaker has two minutes.
Honorable members of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, my name is Ellen Wise, and I'm a licensed California attorney. I realize that this matter is not on your agenda today, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of those residents of San Mateo County whose interests have been adversely affected by last week's San Mateo Planning Commission decision to approve the Still Path Use Permit Amendment. As you are no doubt aware, this decision, if upheld, allows conversion of a small nonprofit education and meditation retreat to a $40 million per year, 76-bed residential non-medical drug, alcohol, and mental illness rehabilitation facility. Yesterday, I wrote a letter to each of you explaining key reasons why the Planning Commission's decision is without merits on its face, and I urged you to remand the matter to the Planning Commission immediately, even prior to our appeal to this body. You may ask, why such urgency? With your permission, I would like to briefly answer that question with a few facts which add substantively to the arguments made in my letter. First, it is clear that the Planning Commission had ex parte communications with the Still Path applicants, which were not disclosed to the public before or during the January public hearing. Due to Chairman Rankin's procedural maneuvers, neither the public nor the named opponents to the Still Path application have had any opportunity to rebut the contents of these ex parte communications. If these communications remain secret, the public's right to a transparent and unbiased analysis of arguments for and against the application will forever be lost. Second, the Still Path applicants, Michael and Ray Blatt, are deep-pocketed commercial real estate developers whose proposed use of the existing Stillheart nonprofit educational retreat is as a commercial venture which will rake in $45,000 per month from each of their 76 clients. By their own admission, the vast majority of Still Path clients will not come from San Mateo County.
And Ms. Wise, we'll need you to wrap up. The 2 minutes is just about over.
All right. On behalf, there is a nonprofit organization currently trying to purchase this property from Bill Porter and Joan, his wife Joan. And on behalf of the citizen I represent, I respectfully submit that their vested interests rest in your hands. We recognize and applaud universal access to affordable addiction rehabilitation facilities. The Still Path proposal offers neither universal nor affordable care to the residents of San Mateo County. I urge you to immediately inform planning and the applicant of your intent to remand this matter for a full, transparent, and unbiased investigation and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wise. We have received your correspondence and forwarded them to counsel for his review.
Yes, thank you.
Our next speaker is Therese Dyer. If Therese is here. I guess.
Good morning, County Supervisors. Teresa Dyer, 1408 Crespi Drive. I'm still seeking justice from the County of San Mateo. Now, how do you file a complaint against a county employee? If Ordinance 204.030-4430 that was implemented on 8/12/08 was never used, then what procedure do you use? I was given a copy of the Personnel Commission rules while attending the 14 charter review meetings. That was when Mr. Pine was the chair, he remembers me. But when Paul Schmidt from Pacifica worked in the DA's office and was a whistleblower because a supervisor was doing things illegal on the computer, they went in front of the Personnel Commission. And the supervisors compensated him $35,000, and Paul Schmidt was harassed to the point where he had to leave Pacifica and go to Oregon. Now, there are 3 people in Pacifica that are affected, and we're all Catholics. So I don't know if we're being targeted or discriminated at once. I'm one of them, Paul Schmidt is the other one, and Mary Larkin, who lost a lot of money under the embezzlement of the Adult Protective Services. So, Mr. Beers, I will address your public records that wasn't adequately addressed my points of view, so I will be contacting you further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer. Our next speaker is Roger Medler.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Roger Medler. Anyway, I'm looking for some enforcement of zoning and permits and code enforcement for the city of Pacifica. There's a lot of people there looking for your help, and we wish you would help us. Every time I ask a question, it seems to be not in your jurisdiction, and then I have contacted your office for the cover-up and protection of a business behind my house and would like to have some help. Chris Hunter did approach me and some information, and he gave me a business permit and environmental permit. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a legal business and proof of this business being legal and somebody to help me. You can always schedule a meeting with me. That would be just fine. And anyway, I'd like to know, I hope that you are serving the public. Anyway, I have been filing out enforcement complaints, nuisance complaints, petitions, request forms, and they have been no good. They won't answer. The city of Pacifica won't answer to any of these. They just plain don't. They said they don't have the petitions, they don't have the permits, and they're not going to enforce their codes. They're going to do nothing about it. So I want to know who you go to. And people in Pacifica just gave up on their planning and city council meetings because they're just not getting anywhere. I think maybe you should help out Pacifica a little bit. Maybe put a little effort into it. And that should be it. All right. Well, thank you very much. Huh?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Medler. I know Supervisor Horsley's office has been talking to you, and I might suggest that council perhaps clarify some of these points with Mr. Medler. I don't think you have to do it now, but perhaps that could be of help.
Absolutely. I'd be willing to sit down with this gentleman and try to sort it out with him.
Thank you. And our final speaker in public comment is Martin Fox.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, my fellow veterans, Supervisor Slocum and Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland and Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county and pledging your allegiance to our republic, which guarantees freedom of association for all, even those persons living with serious mental illness who do not believe they are sick and cannot advocate for services that would restore their freedom. The Helping Families in Mental Health Crisis Act, H.R. 3717, was written and introduced by a congressman who is a clinical psychologist and includes incentives for state and local mental health treatment to include implementation of assisted outpatient treatment programs like Laura's Law. Kaminar's chief executive, Chip Huggins, wrote an unqualified endorsement of the Helping Families in Mental Health Crisis Act, and the San Mateo Daily Journal and the Daily Post published his endorsement. Daniel Brickman's untreated serious mental illness resulted in an assault at the medical center almost 2 years ago. He assaulted children in San Carlos. a county nurse and a security guard at the medical center last fall, and we still don't know if it will cost the $225,000 a year the county taxpayers will pay for John Jacob Berger's serious mental illness to be treated at Napa State Hospital this year after being found incompetent to stand trial for knifing his mother in San Mateo last August. If you believe in collaboration, this county's 2014 legislative program should reflect support for solutions to problems created by untreated mental illness, like the Helping Families in Mental Health Crisis Act and the U.S. Department of Justice approved Laura's Law. Mental illness is a nonpartisan disease that strikes without regard to party affiliation, and the health system's policies which deny treatment to those persons living with mental illness who fail to volunteer for it are not merely intellectually and morally bankrupt. They are inhumane abuse of those least likely to object, even if they are decorated veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. That concludes public comment. We'll now proceed to set the agenda. Let me note that we are pulling item number 26 pertaining to the loan to the Crystal Springs County Sanitation District and the related amendment with cities in the jurisdiction. So that will be considered at a future meeting. So with that removed, any other items that any of my colleagues like to take off the consent or?
Move approval of the consent agenda and
Second.
the regular agenda as well.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Horsley and seconded by Supervisor Tissier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's now time for presentations and awards. We have 4 today, all of which will of great interest. And we begin with a poetry reading. I believe Supervisor Slocum will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as we get ready to start this meeting a little differently this morning with a poetry reading, just a little background. The Poet Laureate program, we began work on that back in April last year. As you recall, we had 15 nominations for the Poet Laureate, and the committee put in a lot of hours. We had a lot of meetings, and eventually Carolyn Goodwin was selected as Poet Laureate, San Mateo County's first Poet Laureate, I might add. A little bit about Carolyn. She was born in Alaska. She lives over on the coast, Montara, with her husband and 2 daughters. She moved to San Mateo County in 1999 to attend Stanford University as a Wallace Stenger Fellow in Poetry. And she's currently a professor at the California College of Arts in MFA writing and the undergraduate program in writing and literature. In February, we're going to, Supervisor Groom and I are going to host a Poet Laureate reception. That's February 4th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the San Mateo Main Library downtown. And Carolyn is going to share some of her poetry with you. Hopefully we'll have some music and some entertainment and some refreshments. And it should be a fun evening. So mark your calendar for February 4th. And if you're free, we'd love to have you there. And as part of the Poet Laureate's duties, we do plan from time to time to open up a board meeting with a poetry reading, which will be a little bit different at first. And Carolyn is going to do a poetry reading this morning, a poem she wrote. And her campaign during her tenure is going to be called Poetry Is. Poetry Is. And so her poem this morning is called Poetry Is. So I'd like to introduce to you San Mateo County's first Poet Laureate, Caroline Goodwin.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. Just getting used to this a little bit. Thank you all so much for your attention and for making room for poetry this morning and in the coming years. Ever since you gave me this honor in October, I've been thinking about this place where we live together, the diversity of people who work and play and raise their families here, and the meaning of poetry to a community. I've been asking myself the question, what is poetry and why does it matter? So I started collecting short definitions of poetry from my daily reading, And I'd like to share one quote with you now. And this is by the New York poet Eileen Miles. Eileen writes, "It is the most cherished gift of a lifetime, language, especially the idle use of it, that's all furry, snippy, lazy, and tough. Language in the hands of poets is a squalling baby and an old man. It's a creaky, sentimental, surprisingly weird woman. Of course, it's totally trans, it's queer, and presupposing that you learned it somewhere, the point is that language is free, and it is the medium that gives us the knowledge that other people think too, and it offers us a way to transmit our thoughts. Language is the ultimate human tool, portable, invisible, and it zips around the world at no cost. And poetry is language's first use and its last. While so many languages are dying right now, people continue chanting its poetry." And that's the end of the quote. And just a little bit about my poem before I read it to you. Growing up in Alaska, I was surrounded by a harsh and beautiful landscape. This landscape was both my friend and my enemy. The birch trees contained a pinkish peach color that was truly extraordinary, especially in the middle of winter. The trees seemed to glow. To my young mind, there was poetry in between things and within the very small things, and this was all somehow bound to the earth. It seemed to come from the earth. And my poem, which everyone should have a copy of, and thank you so much. Poetry is: light in the birch bark, paper thin, peach-colored, tree, and gold weeds along the river. It comes early and remains all afternoon. Look up from your screen, it says, here. I am the green bits of beach glass at your table, the bowl of bright thread. I came up through the layers of soil and stone, through the cattails and couch grass, through the mud flat, through the flock of herons nesting to the east, through the feet. So take me and hold me, fire in the weeds, light in the hedge, finding your heart, my home." Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goodwin. A very nice way to start our meeting today. We'll now have a series of presentations concerning the county's STARS Award, where we recognize each year programs of particular note and merit. We have a number of awards to present, and I believe Rocio is going to help introduce the item for us.
Good morning. Good morning, President, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, Mr. Byers. I'm Rocio Kirkson from the Human Resource Department, and it's really great to be here this morning to introduce this year's STARS Awards recipients. In just a few moments, you'll hear from representatives from the 5 programs that are being recognized by your board for their outstanding contributions to this organization. Following their presentations, we'll introduce the employee receiving an award for her idea to enhance services. As some of you may know, this is the 8th year that we've had this program. So it's been a very strong program, recognizing outstanding contributions from county programs. We have 4 award categories. The award categories include program performance, customer service, green, and employee suggestion. This was actually a banner year for the STARS program. We received nearly 30 program entries, which is the highest number. We also had a large representation from departments, and we hope to continue that to the next year and the following years. We had 2 review teams evaluate the program submissions, and it was based on set criteria. The criteria included things like ensuring that there was alignment with county goals, that the program improves client outcomes, and of course that it demonstrates innovation. So today we have the 5 programs being recognized by your board. For the Customer Service Award, we have the Tax Collectors Live Chat Program. and Health Systems Patient Experience at Willow Clinic. For the Program Performance Award, we have Child Support's Performance Management and Health Systems Kaizen Promotion Office. And for the Green Award, we have Public Works Strategic Energy Master Plan. So those are the main awards. However, we also did have some honorable mentions, and I do want to acknowledge those. For the program performance, we have Probation's Veterans Treatment Court, Human Resources Regional Training Consortium, and Health Systems Total Wellness. And for the Green Award, honorable mentions, Health Systems Regional Approach for Reusable Bag Ordinance, and County Manager's Office Board of Supervisors Agenda Process, as well as Sheriff's Office Maple Street Greening Project. Now we'll hear from representatives from the 5 award-winning programs. We'll begin with Robin Elliott from the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, followed by Conrad Fernandez from the Health System, then Carlos Hernandez from Child Support, Dr. C.J. Canalopi from the Health System, and finally Doug Koenig from Public Works. And now I'll turn it over to Robin, who will highlight the live chat program.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Baltney, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Byers. I'm here today to give you an overview of our live chat program that was implemented back in 2012. The live chat program came into being through conversations we had in the department surrounding ways that we could better serve our customers. And one of the things we were looking to do was to leverage technology to reach out to customers and give them an opportunity to get through to us in a more efficient manner when they didn't need to utilize our phone system, which can be a little bit cumbersome because it routes them through an IVR process and can result in them waiting in quite a long phone queue. So through these conversations, our Treasurer Tax Collector, Sandy Arnott, asked about the possibility of implementing a chat system through our website, similar to what you might see on various e-commerce sites, whereby a customer could connect to an individual in the tax office to answer basic questions and get that answer they need and just kind of move along through their day without having to either come into the office or wait in a long phone queue. And so we researched options available and found a program that would work with our website. And that was implemented in June of 2012. The chat option has been very successful in providing a faster, more direct option for taxpayers to get through to us. Because it allows all of the agents in our office to be logged into the system at the same time. So basically we have 14 agents logged into the chat. Anytime somebody requests assistance through that means, it rings on everybody's desk. And so anybody who's available will pick up that request and answer the question, rather than a customer having to wait in a phone queue for somebody to be available to answer them. This has been particularly valuable during our busy times, during tax collection periods and things like that, where our phones get very heavy. It's resulted in people not having to wait for up to an hour in a phone queue. They can get through, get an answer, and be on their way, do their business. The other thing it's been a great assistance in is for our satellite offices in both South San Francisco and Half Moon Bay. Oftentimes we do get customers at those offices that need a level of assistance that's beyond what the cashier there can maybe handle. And so the cashier has a means to immediately get through to somebody in the tax office, get an answer for that taxpayer, assist them there so that they don't have to be redirected to the Redwood City office. So it's just provided a very good means for assisting taxpayers in a much more timely manner. We went live on June 6th in 2012 with no notification, no publication of anything regarding this service by our office. We just simply put the button on our website. Within 10 minutes of that implementation, we had our first chat request. So people were there and looking for this sort of an option to get through to us. We had several chat requests throughout that day, and it's been a regular means of contact for taxpayers since then. Since implementation, we've assisted a total of 6,334 taxpayers through the live chat. Of that number, 684 of those came in during our peak collection time in November and December. And of that 684, 212 came in on December 9th and December 10th, which are our two very busiest days, December 10th being the delinquency date for taxes. So it's proven to be a very popular means of getting assistance for people where we are assisting a very heavy load, especially during that busy time. In addition to that, we're receiving an overwhelming amount of positive feedback from the customers that are contacting us in this way. One of the things that they really like about it is that the chat offers them an option to have a transcript emailed to them. And so if they have questions that they may need to refer to later, they can have that discussion emailed to them for future reference. They can refer to it later. The chat also emails us that transcript as well, in addition to remembering prior conversations. So if somebody contacts us again in the future from the same computer, we'll have the history, the chat history that we can refer back to. So it facilitates that connection between our office and the customers so that we can continue to establish that relationship and assist them. To date, we are the only county in California that's offering this service. We have shared the information with other counties throughout the state. But we're very proud to have implemented this and for it to have been such a success. And it's continuing to grow, and we hope to see much more utilization of this in the future. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. That's a terrific, terrific program. At this point, too, would like Supervisor Slocum, if you would, could you present a proclamation in connection with this award?
I'd love to. Thank you. Well, where is the treasurer tax collector? There she is. So before I call her up, let me just say that it's pretty amazing, 6,000 chats since you started. And I think the really a couple cool things about that program is the transcript that it produces, and also the fact that if a person logs back in, you have the record of what you were talking about the last time you spoke to that customer. So that's pretty cool. And my colleagues have all used technical support lines on the internet for live chat, and I personally find it really easy to use, and it's so much quicker than trying to get through a phone queue where they say customer service is our #1 goal, and then you're on hold for 15 minutes. So thank you, Sandy, for your leadership, and the staff of the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office. Thank them also for implementing this live chat program. It's just the first step. So if you'll join me in front of the seal. And you too. So congratulations. Well done.
There's two resolutions you have to still adopt. Yeah, I know that's going to come at the end.
I just want to really congratulate Robin on implementing this, because she's such a fantastic asset for the county and for my department. She is the go-to person. If I think of something, I walk into her office and I say, what do you think about this? And she just takes it and runs with it. This is a perfect example. So my thanks to Robin, and certainly the staff that supports this and mans this and really makes it the success that it is. So thank you very much. I appreciate this very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Conrad Fernandez from the Health Systems Patient Experience at Willow Clinic.
Good morning, honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, Mr. Holland. So on behalf of the staff at the former Willow Clinic and now the Fair Oaks Health Center, I want to thank the Human Resources Department for this recognition. About a year and a half ago, I was invited to be part of a patient experience project at the Willow Clinic because the Willow Clinic had some of the lowest scores in our medical center clinic system. And so a group of doctors, nurses, frontline staff, and myself, we got together for over a year on a monthly basis, and we discussed options at improving patient experience. And one of the things we realized that in order to get staff involved, we had to get them engaged. That without engaged staff, you really can't have patient experience. So we spent time educating staff about why patient experience mattered, both from it being the right thing to do and also from a financial aspect. And we gave them tools. We provided training on service commitments, which is behaviors of how we treat each other and how we treat our patients. We also brought in a tool called AIDIT, which is a best practice used in hospitals across the country. And it's a customer service tool. And as a result of the AIDIT training, the service commitment training, and the work of this committee, we saw our scores go from 83% to 95% over a period of 16 months. What made this satisfying was the involvement and leadership from the medical director to the frontline staff. And also we were able to give staff real-time feedback about using the tools that we provided in training. Since then, we've used the AIDA tool for all our clinic systems, and we're looking forward to using this grant money to further provide educational resources to all our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Tissier.
I just want to congratulate the health department and those at Willow Clinic, as well as our Fair Oaks Clinic, and the rest of them that are taking up this patient experience effort. Because I think the one thing we've done with our health department, our hospital, and our clinics is really try to make sure that the patients that we serve get the best service they possibly can, and that this would be their place of choice of where they would go for medical help. And you've done a terrific job working with HR, working with the staff. And I do agree with you. I think being engaged is really important. It makes people feel important in their job rather than just going to work and, you know, putting the widgets in this hole and that hole. It's just having something that you really care about and they're passionate about. So thank you for pulling it all together. Thank HR for, you know, being the glue that binds it together, and the health department that, you know, from the top to the bottom, they always are engaged. So I want to thank you and ask you if you'll come up, and maybe I see the A teams here. Are there any people from the Willow or the HR that would like to come up? We'll take a nice group hug and group picture.
Our next presenter is Carlos Hernandez from Child Support.
President Pine, honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, Mr. Byers, good morning and thank you for having me here. I'm here today to discuss the exceptional program performance benefits of two dashboards, the goal calculator and the case management tool. The Department of Child Support's collections on current support and arrears have improved steadily over the past few years. We attribute our agency's ability to improve performance during the worst recession since the Great Depression directly on the enhanced ability of our staff to appropriately work their caseloads utilizing the goal calculator and case management tool. Prior to 2011, workers primarily worked their cases using a system-driven task that alerted them to the next action on the case. Performing only in this way is not strategic or efficient. Fast forward to the present, and workers using the goal calculator and case management tool now have the ability to get an aerial view of caseload performance and target specific underperforming areas. The goal calculator allows workers, supervisors, and managers to get a quick snapshot of caseload performance. It allows managers to set specific performance goals for units and individuals and provides workers with monthly updates of which cases they should focus their case management efforts on. With the ability to see each individual worker's performance, we are now readily able to identify best practices and share these with others. The ability to benchmark our progress compared to other counties is also of great value. The case management tool is the magnifying lens that allows us to target specific types of cases. Among many things, it allows workers to stratify their cases into different categories, such as willing but unable to pay obligors. It gives workers the power to extract a list of cases based on these specific stratification values. In the case of obligors that are willing but unable to pay, workers focus their efforts on identifying barriers and making referrals to other agencies to get them the help that they need, such as employment services, mental health, or disability. The case management tool gives us the power to sort and organize our cases so that we work proactively and efficiently. The goal calculator and case management tools have eliminated the guesswork in our casework. These dashboards give us the means to develop, implement, and assess specific and targeted tactics that better serve the needs of our child support customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Groom.
Thank you. Thank you. All that technology and all those statistics and all those new pieces of software are all terrific. But, you know, if you put this right into perspective, it's about families and it's about children and it's about not having the necessary funds. And so if this allows us to be much more efficient and collect those funds so that generally moms and their children are better off and can have food on the table and a nice warm coat in these cold days. So my congratulations to you, Carlos, and to Ileana and the rest of your staff. And let me present this to you.
Our next speaker is Dr. C.J. Canalapi from Health System Medical Center.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Byers. Thank you very much. It's my privilege to actually accept this on behalf of the Kaizen Promotion Office, and I want to take a moment to recognize the members of that office, many of whom are in the audience today. Viral Mehta, Sandra Santana Mora, Shay Anderson, Carmela Soto, Carly Dickman, and our first graduated KPO fellow, Dr. Neil Patel. This has been an exciting journey for the health system, and specifically the medical center, as we work to adopt and adapt key elements of lean production. The philosophy and tools have been implemented in many industries, but the application to health is especially unique. Not only are the stakes literally life and death, but the environment is extremely complex and often unforgiving. We have long known that our single greatest asset is our staff. They are mission-oriented and committed to the well-being of our patients. All too often, however, they encountered significant barriers to providing the care that they wanted. That is where this transformational work really comes into play. By employing the lean principles of continuous improvement and respect for people, the KPO has led efforts to remove waste and improve outcomes. With the training of current and future leaders, the organization has begun to build the infrastructure for improvement. Working with small groups of line staff creating standard work, we are developing the process by which work is sustained and improved. All of these are elements that will build a culture of continuous performance improvement members and problem solvers. Through our early efforts and under the leadership of the KPO, the health system has begun to see truly amazing results. We have seen a 67% reduction in the number of new patients waiting for care. That's over 1,400 additional people who have been able to establish with a primary care provider. There has been improved flow in the operating room, resulting in reduced surgical cancellations and a resulting net savings of $250,000. Work in the emergency department has resulted in a fourfold improvement in patient satisfaction scores. While these results are impressive and we're proud of our accomplishments, we realize that we have really only scratched the surface. As our program develops, as the philosophy becomes more embedded and the culture evolves, we anticipate even greater achievements, and we look forward to sharing those with you in the future. Thank you again for your support and recognition.
It's my honor to present this resolution honoring the program. Later today, we'll hear more about the lean undertaking. Just a couple comments now. I had the opportunity to visit one of the report outs of your work at the medical center. A couple things really struck me. Just how collaborative this is, the way everyone is involved, the way it's not a top-down solution, and that everyone contributes and helps to find these efficiencies. I'm so impressed with the measurable results and that you've achieved. And anytime I talk to anyone in health about this, the enthusiasm is just so palatable that it's really encouraging, exciting to see. this process have such a positive effect on our operations and, on the sense of, ownership amongst our team. So if everyone wants to come up who's involved, again, I can present this plaque.
Our final presenter this morning, Doug Koning from Public Works.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Maltby. DPW nominated the Hall of Justice Energy Retrofit Project for the Stars Green Award. As you can see from this slide, the Hall of Justice is the biggest consumer of energy in the county portfolio outside of the health and hospital system. This initially did not start off as an energy project, and in fact these systems here, the boilers, the controls, and the dampers were identified as deficiencies and recommended for replacement during the 2006 facility condition assessment. Fortunately, these projects were not underway until our new energy program manager came on board. He was able to review these projects from an energy perspective and make several recommendations to enhance the project. Otherwise, we would have simply replaced unserviceable equipment with serviceable equipment, and we would have missed out on a lot of opportunities. The project financials, as you can see, after rebates and grant monies, the net project cost was shared with the Administrative Office of the Courts, who paid 53%. Sorry. Project financial, I'll let you look at this slide for a moment here because the results were absolutely astounding. They far exceeded our wildest expectations. All of the savings and reductions here are in terms of annual savings, annual reductions. And as you can see, a 13% reduction in electricity consumed in the building. I'm sorry. That's not a misprint, a full 82% reduction in the consumption of natural gas in the Hall of Justice. We're currently only burning about 18% of what we used to burn. Because of that, you see that we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by greater than half. And when you combine that with the $280,000 annual savings, you can see that this project was wildly successful in terms of economic and environmental perspective. The improved building performance easily qualified the Hall of Justice for the U.S. EPA's Energy Star Award, which is presented to buildings that are in the top 35 percentile based on energy performance when compared to buildings of similar size and use. And as you can see, the actual EPA rating is 87, which puts the Hall of Justice in the top 13 percentile. I would like to recognize the project team that made this all possible. The project manager, Noel Manuel, working closely with the energy program manager, Andy Jane, and with the operations folks, the stationary engineers, Wynn and Kim Chapman, who made this project a success. And the only objective we apparently didn't achieve was getting these guys to smile for these pictures. Thank you very much.
Well, this is really an electrifying project here. It comes at really a great time, not only a cost savings, but we're heading into obviously a historic drought, so anything we can do to save water and at the same time save energy and reduce our footprint on greenhouse gases is really a phenomenal thing. So I want to congratulate you and your entire team from Public Works, and let me present this resolution to you and the team. Hopefully they're here.
We could call forward the director for a hug as well.
There's Andy Jane, yeah. This guy's good.
Yeah.
Thank you to all the presenters. Great job. The last award that we have this morning is the Employee Suggestion Award, and this year we received 14 suggestions, and all the suggestions were reviewed by county departments for viability. At this time, we have one award recipient, and that's Marina Yu from the Housing Department. Her suggestion is to explore establishing department-specific community service activities for employees, and this would allow for enhanced teamwork and volunteerism while contributing to the greater community. And now I'll ask Marina to come up while Supervisor Pine presents her with her commendation and award.
Keeps on falling off.
I couldn't even get anything.
Really? Oh.
Well, thank you everyone for this award. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed to receive it. This is my third time in getting it in maybe 4 or 5 years. But as you know, there were only 14 employee suggestions submitted this year. 2 of them were mine. And so my feeling is that I know that my department is full of spirited people with great ideas, and I know that the county-wide has as many, and so we really need to encourage more ideas. So, but thank you anyway.
And Marina has agreed to serve on the committee to expand that, the number of employees, so thank you, Marina.
And it's good advice to have more ideas, but if you keep coming up with good ideas, we'll keep giving you awards.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the county manager's office. Greatly appreciate your continued support.
Thank you for putting this all together.
Mr. President, can I make a motion to adopt the resolution so they can actually keep them?
No, I was going to say we do have some action to take. We do have one speaker, but we can have a second on that motion and have the speaker. Okay.
A, B, and C.
So we have a motion by Supervisor Tissier, seconded by Supervisor Groom for the 3 items, but we have one speaker, Martin Fox.
Good morning again, President Pine, members of the board, my fellow veterans, Supervisor Slocum, Mr. Maltby. Mr. Holland and Mr. Byers, thank you for your service to the county. Please condition the award to the Veterans Treatment on the Veterans Treatment Court issue to compliance with California Rule of Court 10.613. A Program Performance Award honorable mention includes a $7,500 award for the Veterans Treatment Court. The state of California's judicial branch is governed by the California Judicial Council. California's Judicial Council requires that proposed local court rules are subject to public participation before they are approved and become effective. The Veterans Treatment Court local case management rules were adopted following a series of private lunches with lawyers and public employees and without any public participation, according to the judicial profile that was published in the San Francisco Daily Journal exactly 1 week ago. The Pathways Mental Health Court local case management rules were also adopted without any public participation, as my opening brief that was filed with the First Appellate District reflects. Both sets of criminal court rules perpetuate the health system's intellectually and morally corrupt policies and procedures which deny treatment to veterans and other persons living with mental illness who cannot advocate for themselves because they do not understand their need to seek treatment voluntarily. Voting to award additional public funds to any program ratifies the policies and procedures they operate under. It makes this award a paternalistic $7,500 slap in the face to the public in this county's veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. It is also evidence supporting the San Francisco Chronicle's May 18th story that identifies the most corrupt county in California.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to a special commemoration of first 5 of San Mateo County. In terms of what we have, how we'll organize this today, I'll just briefly introduce the matter and present a commendation on behalf of the board. I believe we also have representatives from Rich Gordon office. Are they here? Kevin Mullen and Jerry Hill? Okay, So I'll have you come up next to present your recognitions, and then we'll have a brief presentation by Kitty Lopez, the Executive Director, and perhaps Michael Garb as well, the Chair. So again, we are taking a moment to recognize First Five of San Mateo County. I think, as everyone knows, there's so much attention nationally now on the 0 to 5 age group, or in fact prenatal to 5, with talk across the country about universal preschool and the Obama administration putting a big focus on early childhood education and development. But California has been working on this for 15 years, since the passage of Prop 10 in 1998, where a tobacco tax was put in place to fund First Five efforts in the counties across California. In our county, over that time period, $120 million has been allocated to programs to help prenatal to 5 in a whole host of areas, which we'll hear more about later: kindergarten readiness, children's health initiative, early literacy, developmental screenings, and many, many more. So on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, all of whom are so dedicated to promoting the success and prosperity of children, it's my honor to present this award to Kitty Lopez. Universal support for these efforts. Oh, good. You got a great turnout there. All right. Very good. We'll have the other presentations by the other offices, and then we'll turn it back over to you.
Honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, Mr. Byers. My name is Margot Grant, and I'm here with Assemblyman Rich Gordon's office, along with Carol Hong from Assemblymember Kevin Mullen's office, in conjunction with State Senator Jerry Hill's office as well. It is our pleasure to be here to recognize and to honor the San Mateo County First Five Commission for 15 years of dedicated service. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being on the forefront of investing in children ages 0 to 5, and we look forward to many, many more years of continued hard work. Thank you again.
I'm going up again.
Aren't you an alternate?
Well, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Byers, I'm Kitty Lopez, proud Executive Director of First Five. Thank you so much for this honor and this recognition. This is certainly a wonderful time, as President Pine said, to be in this field of early childhood health and education. First Five has a very unique role in our county across the state to connect all the dots, to really address all the comprehensive needs that young children have, whether they be health and development, learning, family support, and all the systems in which those reside in our county. We can't do that alone. We do this work with so many community partners throughout the 15 years, all our community-based organizations, our health system, our education system. And Assemblyman Rich Gordon, thank you so much, Margot. I'm sorry he couldn't be here today, but he was a First Five commissioner. I know he was a supervisor on this board. He always said that we have to use our voice to speak for children because they don't come into a Board of Supervisors meeting. They don't go to Sacramento. And I wanted to show this very, very short video because this is the voice of children. You will see this. If you haven't seen it again, I've seen it a few times. It's worth seeing. They have a voice to say, and in this film, they will share with us what works for them and what does not.
That's me at 4 months old. I'm one of the thousands of little miracles born into poverty every day. That's my mom. She's 17 and never finished high school. She's got some big dreams for me, but she's alone and she's scared. This is my first birthday. That's my grandma, my cousin Tanya, and her boyfriend Kevin. We all live together. It's cold and crowded. I hope we move soon. I don't like Kevin. He's always yelling. This is my second birthday. We're all at daycare, strapped in watching TV again. I wish I could just run around. This is my third birthday. My brother William's taking care of me while my mom sleeps. She works the night shift, so we can't turn up the TV, but we get to go to bed whenever we want. This is my fourth birthday. We're sleeping at my aunt's this month. I don't know when my dad's coming home, but I'm hungry and I miss him. This is my fifth birthday. This is my first day of kindergarten. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm unprepared because I didn't get the right start. I'm twice as likely to be in special education. 30% more likely to never go to college. 70% more likely to be arrested for a violent crime. Become a teen parent. Drop out of school. Never hold a job. Spend the rest of my life in poverty. My mom plays with me all the time. She smiles a lot now, and she knows she's not alone anymore. Grandma, Tanya, and Kevin read me a story every night before I go to bed. I go to my school every day, where I get to run and play and see all my new friends. Will and I go to preschool together. Today we learned about dinosaurs and played a counting game. Every morning, my dad and I brush our teeth and eat breakfast together. We have our own place now, and I know we'll always be together. This is my first day of kindergarten. I'm rested, I'm eager, I'm confident, I'm curious, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I am your future. Change the first 5 years, and you change everything. Anyone interested in investing?
That's a pretty good film. I always say there's not much more I can say after that. That film was produced by the First 5 Years Fund and Chris Perry, who was the very first executive director of First 5 in our county. There's lots more work to do, and I am very proud to be here and continue the work of First 5 to help our young children have the best start possible. Commissioner Garb, would you like to say something?
I just want to thank the board for recognizing the 15 years of San Mateo First 5. And after watching this video, which I've seen several times, I still get chills and goosebumps. There's a lot of work to be done with declining revenues for First Five from tobacco tax, which is good in one way, but we need to continue the work and continue to support the children and families in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garb and Kitty Lopez. We need to take action to formally approve the commendation, but other members of the board may have a few comments they'd like to make.
Motion to approve.
Second. I'll second. Can I just make a comment?
Yes, please.
The first part of that video is really heartbreaking, and the second part is much more hopeful. And I just want to commend. I was formerly, and actually I'm the alternate for the First Five Commission, and I commend them. The work that you do is incredibly important, and I want you to know we all support it. And I also want to commend my colleague, Supervisor Carol Grunow, for the work that she does also for children. They are the future, and we've got to invest in children now.
Any other comments? And we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Our last presentation today concerns the LEAN award, the LEAN program, which we've heard a little bit earlier, and we'll learn more about it now. I turn it over to you, Dr. Ehrlich. Excuse me, Ms. Rogers.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Holland, Mr. Maltby, and Mr. Byers. Susan Ehrlich and I are really pleased to have the opportunity to share a bit more with you than CJ was able to this morning about the health system's experience and promising results using an adaptation of the LEAN performance improvement method for healthcare. As CJ mentioned, we started this effort several years ago in the medical center, but we've actually been pushing it out now throughout the health system and have started to see very promising results as well in behavioral health and recovery services and aging and adult services. We have decided very recently to rename our effort LEAP, which is Learn, Engage, Aspire, and Perfect. And that's because this is what it's all about for our staff as well as for our clients. As you no doubt will agree, LEAP is a much more joyful call to action than LEAN. Although I think our health officer wants us all to be lean, the fact is it's not all that inspiring. But leaping is joyful. And LEAP also allows us to really distinguish the health-specific challenges, opportunities, and applications of LEAN, which, as you know, is now very widespread throughout many, many different industries. So why don't I do the clicker for you?
Oh, great. Good morning, President Pine, Supervisors, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Byers. I'm going to start us with a little bit of context. And this shows us the times that we operate in are challenging and exciting, to say the least. We've always had an imperative to achieve the triple aim in the health system. And by triple aim, I mean improving quality and outcomes while improving the patient experience and containing costs all at the same time. In addition, the Affordable Care Act just adds to these challenges that we have. And specifically, though it does a wonderful thing by giving our patients more choice because they are now, many more of them are insured, we also have to compete for these patients as they have new insurance. This leads to financial uncertainty, which is added to, again, by the fact that the state is potentially taking money away from us from our realignment dollars. The federal government is taking away our disproportionate share hospital dollars. And many patients will remain uninsured. As many as 2/3 of the patients we have in the ACE program today will continue to remain uninsured, and our responsibility. Finally, we are shifting to a focus, rather than paying for every service we do, being paid for the quality we provide. So these are very challenging times. So to provide the best, most efficient care, we must create satisfied patients and customers who choose to come to see us, This is only possible when we have engaged staff who are doing valuable work in an error-free environment. It used to be that our philosophy at San Mateo Medical Center was, our philosophy of quality improvement was to let 1,000 flowers bloom. Whoever had a great idea, we fostered that idea and let them run with it. But the truth is, today, with the imperatives we face, piecemeal fixes are not enough, and we need a systemic approach. So we turn to Lean, LEAP now in the health system. Lean has a really storied past. It began in Toyota in just after World War II. It took hold in manufacturing, and then in the early 2000s in healthcare, many organizations discovered Lean and developed health-specific approaches that recognize our unique challenges and opportunities. In the beginning, we were very fortunate to get the California Healthcare Foundation to support our effort. They continue to do so. This slide is the beginning of, it's okay. I really want to hear from Det too. But the slide was the beginning of a presentation that they put together describing their funding. If you look around at the hospital systems in the Bay Area, Stanford, Sutter, PAMF, they're all using Lean as their quality improvement philosophy. So you've heard from me. Now our charge nurse at our Daly City Clinic will tell you a little bit about what LEAP means to her.
What did you like the most about participating in this Lean event?
What did I like the most? That I was able to put my say in. You work every day saying, I wish they did this, I wish they did that, but it was nice to actually be able to participate and actually say, okay, this is what I think would work. And just to hear the collaboration and what other people had to say also as well.
So just to give you an idea specifically of how the work happens, the core work happens when we bring together teams of 10 to 15 very diverse groups for a week at a time, typically. The participants, as Det said, feel more is accomplished in a single intense week of work than has been accomplished over weeks or months or even years of piecemeal approaches. The photograph you see here is a group that was organized to begin planning for the Fair Oaks Health Center. It's a very detailed approach that is focused on mapping and evaluating every step in every process. This is a very small piece of the value stream map we created for the emergency department. There we had staff with patients first identify what is truly valued in the process. What is it that a patient would pay for in the process? Not surprisingly, when we start out, that percentage is extremely low. 5, 10, 15% is value added. They map the current state process and they identify wastes and waiting times in that process, and this map shows that. We use multicolored sticky notes to identify steps in the workflow, and we work towards designing a future state by removing the wasteful steps very methodically and adding value for the patients. The process basically takes apart a process and then puts it back together again in a way that has much more value at the end. And you can see that circle at the bottom just shows how the cycle is repeated. One of the really important parts of this work is that the team members need to watch real staff delivering care to patients where that work happens. One of my favorite photographs that we've taken is the one on the left. This is one of our surgeons with our HIT director and showing about how great they feel about the work they did during this work improving charge capture in the specialty clinic. This is one of the tools we used. It's called a spaghetti diagram. This one shows how staff move in a work area, and it's a really stark presentation of the kind of waste that we have. In this example, we were looking at the process we use for vaccinating adult patients at the Daly City Clinic. And after that work, we were able to save the equivalent of 36 miles of walking in a year. This is the tool that we use to generate ideas from the group. You can see that they also get to display their artistic talents. We develop these ideas and test them, and then we develop what's called standard work, which you'll see on the next slide. This is standard work. It is not just the steps in a process, but exactly how much time it takes to achieve each step. This is the Fair Oaks Health Center, and it shows you exactly what you see in a lean environment. It's clean, it's easy to see where you're going. Everything has a place, and it's marked both on the outside and the inside. And we have tools to make sure that things stay in the place that they are. This is called 5-Minute 5S, where the staff look every day and every week to make sure that we're maintaining the high standards that we've established by putting things together in this way. So this is the Fair Oaks Health Center. And if you go there today, you will see this extraordinary space, which was created entirely using lean processes.
We're really pleased about the outstanding participation that we've had from staff engaged in solving problems in their own areas of work. And we're also really pleased about the extent to which we've been able to involve patients themselves as well as their family members in events, and to be able to hear what really matters to them to improve the quality of the work that we're doing. We're also engaged in training our leaders about servant leadership. And the idea of leadership in LEAP is really that the primary role of the leader is to remove barriers to improvement for the staff and the work to improve. So we're starting to see some really terrific results. And one of the things that's most gratifying about this work is that we're starting to see results for really intractable problems that we've struggled with for years. And so this is that we're starting to see a significant decrease in the number of patients waiting for appointments to primary care. We're also seeing a significant reduction, 50% in the time it takes patients to get their prescriptions filled at our pharmacy. And I mentioned that Aging and Adult Services has started to use LEAP. One of the problems that they've faced in the in-home supportive services arena is that it takes a long time for eligible Medi-Cal beneficiaries to be connected with that service. So Aging has been able to reduce the time it takes to screen those patients from almost a month to a single day. And now they're shooting for a reduction in time that it takes to get a first home visit out from a nurse from 50 days to 13. In behavioral health and recovery services, there have been delays in reimbursement as a result of incomplete treatment plans, because treatment plans are essential to actually bill for services to Medi-Cal beneficiaries. And so they've seen a 52% reduction in incomplete treatment plans in the areas where they've implemented LEAP. And as CJ mentioned, the operating room cancellations were really a significant challenge because the OR was staffed to receive patients and expected revenue from those activities, and they've been able to increase revenue by $250,000. And this is all the result of staff ideas. We also have happier clients. For example, the emergency department has seen an increase in patient satisfaction scores, and staff are feeling this is really worthwhile.
And so out of doing this Kaizen, I thought this was a very wonderful and great experiences, because we get to learn the many facets of where we work PHRS and also in the medical center. So we were able to learn some new tools that was able to help us to create new reports and new standard work that will help us alleviate some of the wait time for our billing. So we reduced, and I think it was a great thing to do because we actually reduced the amount of time, hopefully, to 42 days to 7 days. So I think Kaizen was a very great experience for me.
And do you think this is worthwhile to the organization?
Yes, I think it is worthwhile for the organization. It's a very great way to get all the people together in one room and to actually come up with ideas and be able to put aside their normal workflow and able to just concentrate on one specific thing.
Are you excited about implementing the standard work created?
Yes, I'm very excited about implementing this new line of work. It'll reduce the amount of time I have to do my job and a lot of waiting and a lot of repetitive work that I have to do.
So staff are really engaged, and the people participating in these events feel they're worthwhile. Many of us in health have experimented with various approaches to improving quality over the years, and we're getting much better traction with this. We think it's because staff at all levels of the organization are totally engaged. And although Lean, like all quality processes, is data-driven, it is not a back office kind of data-driven process. The data is really brought into the discussions with the people closest to the work to be able to inform the progress. So we've just started this journey. We envision it will be a long haul. We know from consulting with other organizations that sustaining the gains that we have been made in this effort is going to require a multi-year commitment that we're prepared to make. So in summary, what we're excited about is that the triple aim that Susan described, the challenge of addressing the patient's experience, quality, improved outcomes at a more efficient, lesser cost, is finally being addressed through this method, which is so successful with our staff. And we really can envision tackling those ambitious goals. So finally, a couple more staff.
At the Fair Oaks Health Center, and we're standing at our new workflow station.
And I'm Victoria Contreras. I'm a medical services assistant here at Fair Oaks Health Center, and we are on the second floor of the building. Our new workspace is very bright and nice. We love the light that comes in here. All our rooms are 5S, which means everything's in its place. You can walk to any room and you know on the left drawer there's going to be Band-Aids on the left side, no matter what room you go into.
And Victoria and I are a team. We're a patient care team. We sit next to each other, and the new seating arrangement really helps us collaborate. We notice that when there's an increased flow, it's easier to communicate. If there's a problem or something going on that Victoria is working on, I'm often able to chime in and kind of help alleviate any issues right away.
Yeah, this also benefits our patients. They're seeing a lot closer to their appointment time, and they are not waiting as long in the rooms as well.
It really helps us give just-in-time care to the right patient at the right time with good flow.
So thanks very much to the board and to the county manager's office for your leadership and support of this effort in health. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your terrific presentation. I feel like giving that award and giving it to you a second time. But I open the floor to my colleagues for any questions or observations.
No, just I guess that the Fair Oaks Clinic was a great addition to the North Fair Oaks area. So congratulations. I know it was your idea, and you pushed it, and you got it done. So congratulations.
And I'd just like to make a comment. You know, they make it look so easy. You know, these kinds of exercises are not easy. It's taken a lot of time and a lot of effort, but what's really great is they truly have gotten staff engaged, and that makes all the difference in the world. But congratulations to both of you and to the staff, because I know it's still a long process, and it's going to continue to take a lot of work, but you really put the effort in, and it really shows. So thank you.
Just two real quick questions and a comment. You mentioned that you're at the beginning of the process, but you've also just, had achieved a lot already. So, I mean, are we kind of a third of the way through this? I mean, it's you have an enormous, the largest, most complex, department in the county. And I can imagine it will take some time, but maybe you could just give me a little more feeling for kind of what happened, what the road is forward.
Yes, well, to put it into perspective, the medical center is really the furthest along. And as we've tried to envision a multi-year model for this, we think that they're really just kind of a third of the way. through as we look at other systems that have been doing this work for 10 years. Some of them just focused in the medical center kind of arena. It's taken 10 years.
Wow.
So as we envision pushing outside the walls of buildings into the field, into the kinds of workflows that are a little bit less traditional in terms of this kind of reform, we think it's going to take a while, but we're really pleased to see the early stages of success in 2 of our other divisions.
Great. And in your copious free time, at some point, will there be some kind of a briefing paper prepared? Because this is something we need to communicate to people in our county and, in my view, in the state. I mean, this is really cutting edge and a model. So I don't know.
One of the challenges we've set for ourselves is trying to find a better way to, we call it consolidate the gains. And that one way to do that might be a briefing paper. We also want to find better ways to disseminate just within our large organization the kinds of reforms this has created.
Yeah, because the public would be very excited to see this.
Can I just say, almost every Friday we do have report out, so at least
good.
It's not a big on everything, but on the work we've done that week, and they're really uplifting. It's a great way to start Fridays. So I think
Good
we
point.
have one this Friday.
This week and next week.
We do have one this Friday.
I think it's VHRS. So
9 a.m.
if you want to see
Revenue
something,
cycle.
yes. All about the
Well,
money.
if you could keep us apprised of those, or
We will.
may send an email around. And then my final, I guess, question is to the county manager is, my hope would be that this would have applicability in other departments. And so I guess we look to you to think through how and when and if we might extend this.
We are. Budget this year, as we speak.
Excellent. All right. And Ms. Schoon?
I'd just like to say that it's what a wonderful opportunity it is to make our staff, give them more tools and make them better at what they do, which I know they enjoy, but also for our patients. This is just going to be what's such a wonderful thing for the patients who come to our hospital to have quicker treatment and better treatment, and I think it's just a win for everyone. So thank you, ladies, very, very much.
All right. Well, we've spent a good amount of time on presentations, which I think is time well spent to hear about the successes we're having. I must say my presidency is going swimmingly well. Now we will move on to some other business. So County Council on an ordinance concerning the Planning Commission. Oh, I apologize again. It'll take me a little while to get the hang of it. We do have a speaker, Mr. Martin Fox. Thank you for reminding me.
Good morning again, President Pine, members of the board, my fellow veterans, Supervisor Slocum and Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland and Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county. It is my understanding that the Toyota production system lean focuses the concept of delivering customer value by emphasizing reduction of waste. I also understand that in a healthcare setting, it often leads to the identification of non-value added services. The systematic transinstitutionalization of persons living with mental illness who do not understand their need to seek treatment voluntarily is based on whether the degree of danger they present to themselves or others requires the expenditure of scarce law enforcement resources, acute mental health inpatient care, and supportive housing resources. In other words, risk-based voluntary treatment-only policies and procedures place a greater value on predicting risk than preventing tragedy. Human systems are inherently imperfect, and only fools and tyrants believe otherwise. Imperfect systems always entail risk. Laura's Law is admittedly no nirvana, it's a human system. However, it is better than the blood-drenched outcomes that the intellectually and morally repugnant policies and procedures of the health system produces when persons living with mental illness that do not understand their need to seek treatment voluntarily are denied access to effective treatment. You have a non-value added services being provided by the Family Service Agency of San Francisco in its failed PrEP and BEAM programs in terms of excess of $1 million. Everyone knows that someone who isn't negligent and isn't culpable of aiding and abetting doesn't need the immunities like those identified in Welfare and Institution Code sections 5113, 5154, 5259.3, 5267, and 5306. I challenge you to waive all of them.
Mr. Fox, we may need to talk outside of the meeting, perhaps with council. You cannot talk about when you come up to speak on an agenda item, you have to speak to the agenda item, not about other items. So I don't think those comments were pertinent. That's more of a opening comment. This agenda item was on lien. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Byers.
Thank you, Mr. President, honorable members of the board. I am presenting to you today the introduction of an ordinance amending sections 2.61.010 and 2.63.010 of Article 2.6 of Title II of the San Mateo County Ordinance Code, which established the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission, and a waiver of reading of the ordinance in its entirety, as well as a resolution amending Resolution 65013 adopted January 15, 2002, establishing the Arts Commission. As this board is keenly aware, in October of 2013, you revised the boundaries of the county's supervisorial districts. Shortly thereafter, it occurred to me that I ought to ask my staff to review all of the enabling ordinances and resolutions for our many fantastic boards and commissions to determine which of these boards and commissions that are created by ordinance or resolution require, as a condition of membership, that one member reside in each supervisorial district. Because, of course, if you change the boundaries, some current commissioners, if their membership is based on where supervisors are located, may no longer be in the original district. We were able to determine that there are, in fact, 3 current commissions where membership is based on supervisorial districts. They are the Planning Commission, the Parks Commission, and the Arts Commission. These 3 commissions have 2 residency requirements. Number 1, that one member reside in each district, and number 2, that each member continue to reside in the district during the entire term of the member. So these firm residency requirements create kind of, as I mentioned before, kind of a practical problem that if a member moves a few blocks away and is now in a different district, or if the district lines are changed such that they are no longer located in their original district, the member would need to come off the board. Except for the Arts Commission and the Parks Commission, where in fact there's already a provision where the board can make an exception if it's in the quote-unquote public interest. The Planning Commission, however, does not have that, currently does not have that out or that exception. So today's amendments, which are, again, are amendments to the ordinance covering the Planning Commission, the ordinance covering the Parks Commission, and the resolution covering the Arts Commission, would provide the same uniform, kind of standardized language for all 3 commissions. Specifically, if adopted, today's amendments make 5 changes. I'll just cover them more briefly, and then I'll be done. Number 1, if amended, would allow the Board of Supervisors to waive the requirement that one member reside in each district if the board makes a finding that it is in the quote-unquote public interest. And again, that's already in the Arts and Parks Commission, so that would just be for add that to the Planning Commission ordinance. Number 2, the amendments would allow the Board of Supervisors to waive the requirement that one member continue to reside in the district for the remainder of the member's term if the board again makes a finding that it's in the public interest. Number 3, the amendments would clarify that members continue to hold office until a successor is appointed. So by the way, there are term limits here, 3 4-year terms, 12 years. So it would allow, if the term ends, it would allow the member to stay until you appoint somebody to replace that member. So that amendments make that clear. Number 4, to clarify that that partial terms don't count for the 12-year term limit. So again, if somebody resigns and you appoint somebody to finish that term, that doesn't count towards the 12-year term limit. And last, this is more of a cleanup. The amendments would clean up the Planning Commission ordinance by removing the county council, the health officer, and the director of public works as non-voting members. For some reason, those 3 individuals are considered non-voting members of the Planning Commission, but as a practical matter, that has never been sort of implemented. So it would just kind of remove that. Now, of course, those 3 members would continue to be staff for the commission, but not be non-voting members per se. So that's a summary of all the changes, and again, before you is is 2 ordinances and a resolution that I asked that you consider amending.
Questions?
Mr. Byers, is there is there a time limit on how long someone can stay if they're no longer in the district?
No, the amendments would not include such a provision.
I think at some point we should think about that.
Supervisor Z.
I'll just make a comment. I'm going to support this, and part of this came about, I believe, because of the district lines, and we
Yes.
found that some of our appointees are now, we've just redistricted them out. And it was important for some of us that we felt that those that were in those positions have served well and should continue to serve by the board. So I will support this, and I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance and the resolution that goes with it.
I had let's see, 2 quick questions. In the situation where a new appointee fills a vacancy, and you said that would not count towards their term limit?
Correct.
Does it matter at what point the vacancy is filled? I believe with Board of Supervisor members, if a vacancy isn't filled in the first half of a departed supervisor's term, it counts. If it's in the second half, it doesn't count.
Yeah, no, the proposed language does not get that nuanced, frankly. It's just, we'd be happy to, if you want to get more nuanced in that regard, we can do that, but it does not. It just makes it clear that it doesn't count towards your term limits.
Okay.
And briefly to address Supervisor Groom's issue, I think the way to deal with that, perhaps, Supervisor Groom, is you could determine, yes, we'll go ahead and waive in the public interest, but only for a period of time. So I think that could be addressed through the waiver process, if that addresses your concern. Supervisor Pine, I apologize. You had a second question.
No, that's fine. So again, I guess theoretically someone could serve for 15 years.
Theoretically true.
And anyway, you okay with that? Yeah, I don't know. I would suggest we track the Board of Supervisors language on that, where if, unless there's, others might have comments on, it's a small matter, but.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Then my last, we do, as Supervisor Tissier pointed out, we have a couple of real life situations right now. And are we also taking action today to address those real life situations, or we're just stopping the ordinance, have to come back?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is one individual that was affected by the supervisorial district lines changes. We would need to bring back at a near future board meeting a public interest waiver in that case.
Okay.
So that would come back to you after assuming the board adopts these changes. We would then bring back an individual situation for your consideration.
Okay. So we have a motion. If I could suggest an amendment to the motion along the lines I just discussed, so if that's acceptable. I think Mr. Slocum.
President Pine, could you just clarify what you said about the 4-year term and making it run as the board has a 12-year term? Could you just
Yeah,
clarify?
so try to say it more clearly. So with the Board of Supervisors, if a member resigns or is elected to a new office, that position is then filled. So if the departing supervisor is in the second half of a 4-year term, the new supervisor, and for example, might serve for 18 months before he or she stands for election. Now that 18 months doesn't count against the 12-year term limit. But if the replacement came in where there were still 3 more years to go on the supervisor you're replacing, then it does. And I guess that means that in some circumstances your supervisor would serve less than 12 years then. It would be, in my scenario, it would be 3 years, the stub term, 3 years, then 2 full 4-year terms. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Just one more question of Mr. Byers. Is a term then fixed for Planning Commission, Arts Commission, and Parks at 12 years? No exceptions?
No, it's 3 4-year terms. So they're 4-year terms. They get renewed by the board.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for us, Mr. Byers, before we take action?
If you can just give me one moment, I'm looking at the charter with respect to the Board of Supervisors
Okay.
provision. Yeah, so what the charter says with respect to the supervisors is that as follows: for purposes of determining the number of consecutive terms that a member of the Board of Supervisors may serve under Section 202 of this charter, any person elected to fill a vacancy on the board will be considered to have served one full term if there are 2 or more years remaining in the term determined as of the date of election to fill the vacancy.
Right.
And any person appointed to fill a vacancy or elected to fill a vacancy on the board with less than 2 years remaining in the term as of the date of election to fill a vacancy will not be considered to have served a term.
Right.
So that I think
That's right.
clarifies your suggested amendment.
I'm going to say that. I want to ask a question with all due respect, Supervisor Tissier. We have talented commissioners but don't you think they really ought to live in our districts?
Well, I do. I guess the problem is what's happened is this individual did live in my district. Now with redistricting, he's been redistricted out. I think he's done an excellent job, and he's someone I appointed wanting him to serve, as long as possible. So, it was one of those things. It's almost like when we did the redistricting, we wanted to be careful that the supervisors didn't get redistricted out of their own districts. It's sort of the same thing. What I'd also be comfortable if we just made this an exception for this particular time and place, because now you're going into district elections. I don't know if we can do something that simple, but that was the whole point is that we redistricted someone out, and there's someone that I'd like to continue to serve while I'm still here. After I leave, the next person should do from the district. I would agree with that.
I had the same issue with Measure A, and I did replace that person because there had been no meetings yet. And there wasn't a history, but I felt the same thing. I had asked a gentleman to join the Measure A committee, and then under district lines, he moved into Supervisor Horsley's district. And I guess I see what you're saying, because he hadn't served yet, but your commissioner has served.
And now, if my commissioner had moved out of my district, then there'd be no question in my mind. It's that we sort of moved them out, and I think that's a disservice to them. And if they didn't want to serve anymore, which I inquired about that, then I would have felt okay about it. But I think it's sort of a disservice to me because I think he served me very well.
Okay.
I think this will rarely come up, although conceivably when we redistrict in 2020, it could happen again.
That's
so
very
it's
true.
probably
That's very
worthwhile
true.
to have an
But
ordinance.
I appreciate the explanation.
All right, so we have a motion with an amended motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. Our next item is concerns County Service Area Number 7 and various ordinances being introduced concerning the Cross Connection Control Program. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Holland, Mr. Malpe, and Mr. Byers. In September of last year, the State Department of Public Health issued a permit for operation of County Service Area 7, which is a water system in the La Honda area. And as among other provisions of the permit, they required that we incorporate a cross-contamination control program and implement that program within the district. The ordinance amendment before you cleans up some language in the definitions of the county ordinance code, but it also provides for that cross-contamination control program. In terms of process, this control plan needs to be adopted by January 31st of this year. Over the next several months, we'll be out surveying the different properties within CSA 7 to investigate for cross-contamination issues. And finally, by the end of this year, we will make sure that all cross-contamination issues have been addressed through backflow prevention devices or other means. And really what cross-contamination is we're operating a potable water system. And some people have tanks that hold other water that could tie into their potable water system. And we can't run the risk of having a potentially contaminated water source enter the potable water system. And that is the purpose of the ordinance amendment today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on this issue.
Questions?
Move approval.
Second.
I just had one question, Mr. Porter. In the very end of the memo, it says It has also been estimated that the annual program maintenance fee required by environmental health will be $700 per year. I don't understand who does that levied on, or could you just tell me a little more about that fees?
President Pine.
Thank you.
What we do is we keep track of all the people that are within that program. And for fees such as the $700, those fees are allocated evenly amongst those that are within that program. So those that are actually using the service will be paying those fees.
That would be divided amongst a number of homes. It wouldn't be
individuals.
per home.
Correct.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Turn to item 7, which is a resolution approving funding commitments totaling $8 million for 6 affordable rental housing developments. And Mr. Motley, who would be handling this one today?
This, and I believe you have 2 speakers as well.
Yes, we do.
President Pine and members of the board and Mr. Maltby, Byers, and Holland. It is good to be bringing good news back to the board. Today we are proposing affordable housing developments that will create 325 new units in the county. In April of last year, your board approved $13.4 million for affordable housing purposes. $3 million for homeless shelter construction and improvement, $2 million for acquisition of additional housing for special needs populations, and the subject of today's matter, item $8 million for development of new affordable rental housing. A notice, the Department of Housing issued a notice of funding availability on August 30th regarding this $8 million. Staff analyzed the proposals and made recommendations to the Housing and Community Development Committee, which held a public meeting on December 12th. There were a total of 7 applications totaling $15.8 million. The recommendations of staff and the committee are before you today. It's interesting to note that the developments are really spread throughout the county, from Daly City, Foster City, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks. The 325 units of new housing represented by these projects would have taken years more planning and fundraising had it not been for this funding. Instead, and as a result of this funding, our community will see construction taking place over the next 1 to 3 years approximately. And I can answer any questions, and I know there are speakers.
Any questions for Mr. Lowell? Why don't we go ahead and have we'll have the speakers. Matt Franklin from Mid-Penn Housing.
Morning, Supervisors. I want to just take a moment to thank you for your consideration of this item and for your leadership in investing in affordable housing. Mid-Penn has 4 applications for funding as part of this action. They represent a great set of developments, over 250 units total, a diversity of housing types, senior housing, affordable housing for working families as well. The developments are in 4 different cities: Foster City, Daly City, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park, 3 different supervisory districts. It feels to me that with these and really the entire slate, the MHA development and CORE are great developments as well, that you all are really achieving what you set out to do when you dedicated these funds. Under Mr. Maltby's direction, and Bill Lowell and his team have moved very, very quickly to recommend investment in these funds. Part of the action a few months ago when you dedicated these funds was to try to inspire the cities to step up to the plate as well. And you can see that they're doing that. You know that the cities like the county have very tough times. Many of them have had to move funds that weren't housing funds or dedicate the entirety of their housing funds. In the developments we're in, Foster City is putting in nearly $5 million. Daly City is dedicating not only city-owned land, but already 800,000 and considering more funding as well for that development. And we expect East Palo Alto and Menlo Park to consider investments in February as well, financial investments in these developments. They too, given all the challenges they have, I believe, are moving very, very quickly to do that. And then, the kind of third objective I heard from you all was to push this pipeline of developments so that to the point where it's shovel ready. And our developments alone will leverage another $60 million in investment to these developments. But your funding is what makes it happen. So that's another $60 million that will come into the county. Just a final thought, if I could, I can tell you that your leadership has been noticed throughout the Bay Area. It's inspired Santa Clara County, Alameda County, San Francisco County have either taken similar actions or are considering similar actions and sort of building towards it. But you all were really first out of the gate, not just in the decision, but I think as impressively in actually doing it and actually getting the work done. So I just want to thank you for that.
Mr. Franklin, so has another county actually put their LMIH funds to housing?
Yeah, so San Francisco has voted to do that, not just in 1 year, but over several years. And Santa Clara County has voted to do that as well. It's not nearly as big of a chunk of money as San Mateo has, but it's what they had. They're still in the process of kind of working through their challenge to the cities. So they're behind both in the action and certainly in getting to shovel ready and the investment in the county, but they have taken action to dedicate them. And Alameda is actively considering.
Great, that's good news.
Yep.
We have Steve Toller.
Thanks again.
Good morning, President Pine and members of the board. Steve Toller, I'm the Assistant City Manager in the City of Foster City, and on behalf of our City Council and our City Manager, Jim Hardy, I want to thank you. Thank you for your support, your leadership for affordable housing, which is so important in this county. In Foster City, we have been focused on affordable housing for many years. We recognize, we're in a community that has a median home price of about $900,000 to $1 million, but we want to see that we can provide the opportunities for quality of life for everybody that lives and works in this county. And so our City Council has made this a big priority. We had $12 million as part of our Lomont housing funds that were in our redevelopment agency that we had planned to use for the project that's next door to City Hall, which we had previously called our 15-acre site. Now we're calling it Foster Square. We had planned on dedicating a significant amount of that, and then of course the redevelopment dissolution law came into effect that affected all of us. We were hopeful that the county and other agencies within the county would dedicate 100% of those funds, and we took one of the first steps to do that, and alongside you, and we appreciate that. We have dedicated all of the $3.3 million of quote-unquote boomerang funds, plus we've added another $1.5 million to that to fund this project next to us. We've got a great partner in Mid-Penn Housing, and Matt talked about shovel ready. Well, we've done everything but buy the shovels. We have not only gone through the process of providing the entitlement to the property, sold the property to Mid-Penn and its other partners in the development that's going on that site. But we have also approved the use permit 2 weeks ago, and on February 18th, the council will do the final adoption of approving the loan agreement with Mid-Penn. They've already committed those funds to this project and will be taking the final steps. We appreciate your support of this item and consideration of this, and thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Orr. Next will be Mark Moulton and then Melissa Platt.
Good morning, President Pine and supervisors and staff. Given the context for this with the last couple of years of the dissolution of the RDAs in California, today's a good day for affordable housing in San Mateo County. I'm here to say thank you for making the use of $8 million of one-time funds to support developments here in San Mateo. But it's my hope that this commitment represents a start to the establishment of ongoing permanent source funding for affordable housing here. Dedication of a local source of funds to affordable housing will be a way to move us forward on the job-housing balance issue that has a profound effect on our long-term economic sustainability. Your resolution today will help leverage much more financing. It'll create jobs, it'll build housing and infrastructure, and most important, it'll support many life-changing experiences with lifetime success stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton. And Melissa Platt.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the supervisors, Mr. Holland, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. I'm Melissa Platt. I'm the Executive Director for the Mental Health Association of San Mateo County. The Waverly Place project, which is being recommended for funding today, is one of our projects. And at its completion, it will provide permanent supportive housing for some of the most at-risk, lowest income individuals in our community. It's an incredibly important project for us and for our clients. And on behalf of our agency and the clients that we plan to serve, we'd like to thank you for your commitment to the development of affordable housing, your commitment to making sure that people at all levels of income in our community have a safe, decent place to live. You've shown outstanding leadership, and we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I did have one question for Mr. Lowell that I apologize for not asking earlier. The last two items on the chart where the requests were actually 2.1 million and 2.3 million, and in each case, we kind of gave sort of like seed money. On the University Avenue Senior Housing, we have this point. It says funding condition: project must have city funding commitment prior to execution of agreement. But I didn't see a kind of language with the one above on Gateway Apartments. Where I'm going here is, obviously we want to have some certainty these things are going to happen. Or otherwise, to what degree, if at all, is our money at risk?
Two parts. One, the way that one of the things that we do with the Housing Community Development Committee and also with our partners is try to prioritize also who's the most ready out of the gate. Actually, the last two on the list have advanced incredibly rapidly over the last several months, but even 6 months ago, they looked like they were a couple years off. That being said, we want to encourage both of them, and it's a multi-step, typically multi-year process. In the case of University Avenue, the East Palo Alto City Council has agendized for February 18th $350,000, so we'll slightly exceed this, and then they have sent word that they're, like us, starting to put together the 14-15 budget, so it'll be looked at. But this would be immediate as part of the mid-year budget adjustments. And Gateway in Menlo Park has large outstanding loans from the city of Menlo Park, and the city of Menlo Park has said that they will they're soft loans and that they'll renew those. They'll put those back into the redevelopment. So that's the initial part of the commitment there.
All right, so you see these projects coming together?
Absolutely. They're really, it's surprising how quickly they're coming together. So this has been instrumental. And sometimes even if we realize we can't push somebody over the goal line, we try to show our support with early money to incentivize or arm twist other jurisdictions or funders.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise,
just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Lowell, is there any way to estimate when these developments will come online, or is that not a fair
It's tricky.
question?
It's, a few of them are going for what will be really the final piece of financing is the tax credit allocations. Two of them should be going in March and at least another one in the summer in July of this year. Once that happens, the final work, planning work is done gets done, and they look to, there's time restrictions tight time restrictions within which they have to use those tax credits. And so those projects would start in 2015.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, just before, I'm going to make a motion to approve the funding commitment. But I did want to make mention by Foster City, Pam Frizella, who was a former mayor, was every time she had an opportunity to meet with me, always talked about this project and always asked if would the county be willing to match funding. And so I'm really pleased that we're able to do that. I want to also thank Mark Moulton from Hart, Matt Franklin, I think one of the best housing person in the state of California, Bill Lowell, for putting this together. So I'll make a resolution approving the resolution for the funding totaling $8 million for 6 affordable rental housing developments,
Second.
et cetera.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, this is very exciting that this come together so quickly. And we'll look forward to those 325 units.
Yep.
Bring back 325 more. Okay, so I would suggest we go ahead and do information services and parks, and then we'll take a break after that. Yeah, I learned from the master. On information services is we have a director's report. Oh, I'm sorry. I think unless you guys want to switch the order, doesn't really matter. Mr. Walden, I think you're up next, technically. Isn't that right? Number 8, information services? You're so eager, I know.
Good morning, President Pine, honorable members, supervisors, Mr. Holland, Mr. Maltby, and Mr. Byers. We have a short presentation for you today, a few slides. I'll go through them rather quickly. Let me apologize in advance. I have a bit of a head cold, so if I start to sneeze or cough, bear with me. We just wanted to give a quick overview of where we're at and what our vision is for the next year for technology. To mention a few trends that we're seeing right now that we think are impactful to the county and the projects we're working on. The trend of bring your own device, what we call BYOD, and mobility. We see a continued use and desire by staff and by the public to bring their own computers and smartphones and tablets to the workplace, and we're working to implement technologies to support that. With your support and the county manager's office support, we've opened up the gateway to different social media outlets, and we see a continued growth of people's use of Twitter and Facebook and other social media tools that we think is very beneficial to creating stronger connections between departments and staff and the public. We just had a Innovation Day, and thanks President Pine for coming and others for coming to Innovation Day and the support of Mr. Maltby and getting the word out to all the staff. We had members of the public come in and a lot of staff from different departments come in and brainstorm with us about how we can make data more meaningful in our day-to-day work lives and also to the public. Just to mention one other thing, that we have a lot of major projects underway, a lot of them behind the scenes that we hope are going to make things a lot better, more effective and efficient for the county. We have a very large ERP system we're putting in place, planning for a new tax assessor system in partnership with the controller and tax and assessor's office, and of course the criminal justice system that is ongoing. And then just an overlying trend that I'm sure you all see on the news every night and in your personal lives, the continued concern around security and confidentiality as we see news stories around the Target store hacks and NSA concerns by the public of how government collects data. We're trying to balance some of the improvements and new technology we're putting in place with individuals' growing concerns about what does that mean to us and how are you using my data and protecting my data. So we're trying to be thoughtful about that as we frankly replace almost all of the technology in the county and update it to new systems. I mentioned already that payroll, the human resource replacement is underway and the criminal justice system replacement's underway. I saw the presentation by Health, and we were very happy to be a silent partner behind the scenes with them in the Fair Oaks clinic project. That was a very important project for us because we got to try out and demonstrate the viability of a lot of new technology that we hope becomes the basis and the standard for a lot of the technology around the county in the future, and really kind of lays out the groundwork for how we're going to implement new technology and make people in a cost-effective manner more productive in their jobs and happier with the tools they use. We have launched a new project management tool within ISD because we have so many projects going on. with the support of staff. We have all of our projects on an online system now where we can all see and have visibility into our projects and when things are due and share that with our customers. You've all seen the open data portal and the performance dashboard, so I won't belabor that point in detail. I know you're all very familiar with it. We'll continue to support that. Happy to say that we've relaunched the countywide IT governance. The first year was a heads down year where we were just trying to get the budgets in order and some basic things solidified. And now, now that we have a little breathing room, we've re-engaged with the departments in the community and started talking about what's the strategic overall vision for the county. We hope to bring back to you by the end of this fiscal year in June an updated strategic plan, technology strategic plan for the entire county with input from all the departments and stakeholders. And then a few of you are aware, and I've reached out to others, I believe, as well. We've started some proof of concepts where we're trying to really connect the community better to the new solutions we're putting in place. You keep hearing about these great programs we're putting online, better services, better applications, better information and programs by departments. And one of the things we noticed is, some of our less fortunate folks in the county don't have the connectivity, don't have the ability to connect to these services. Sometimes they'll have a smartphone, but they can't afford a data plan. So we're doing some experiments here in the board chambers and out at the little town of Pescadero to test some new technology. And if that goes well, we hope to come up with a master plan about how we can take this county-wide and really get the community more connected when there's some of those challenges. So some of our internal priorities that I just want to highlight to you that we're paying attention to and listening to our customers. Customer satisfaction's very important to us. We're starting to review all of our process. We've come up with a new organizational structure and on-call list so we can be more responsive 24/7 to our customers' needs, and hope to continue to survey our customers and improve our customer satisfaction scores over time. We're going to continue to partner with the departments to control costs on IT. Like I said in our budget presentation, we moved to a consumption-based model, so we've published our new rates and really put the cost controls in the hands of the department consumers. As they consume more, they'll have to pay more, but obviously if there's ways that they can be more efficient at doing their jobs and consume less, then they could be able to control their IT costs over time more proactively. And then I just quickly listed out a few of the new technologies that we have underway. You've heard probably most or all of them. I just want to continue to highlight, I'm very grateful to the support of the county leadership here and in the departments and in my own department. We are, frankly, I think replacing, every time I go to a meeting, we say, well, here's another thing we're going to replace. And I think we've taken on almost every project, so I'm very grateful to the staff's capacity and enthusiasm for change and taking on new ideas as we do things. Some challenges and opportunities that I just want to mention, not that it's going to stop us from being successful, but I think we should all be aware of that we'll be coming back and talking to you more about. We do have a very small department. I always tell my staff we're the epitome of a lean department because there's so few of us to go around sometimes. I think we epitomize just the lean in terms of our size and how much we do. But because of our limited staff size, we spend a lot of time just maintaining the old systems and keeping them running because it's critical that none of those systems go down. And because of that, as we bring in new technology, we're going to have to look for short-term staffing resources, either through contractors or the new Agile Workforce program that we're starting to explore and add positions under to augment staff to both implement the new while we support the old. Along with that, we continue to balance. We have our own internal projects that we're trying to implement countywide and within my own department, understanding that we share the goal for departments to be able to have the flexibility to implement technologies they want to implement and enable them. So we're trying to balance how much time we spend looking inward versus how much time we're able to go out and collaborate with departments and help them be successful. And then through the process of employee engagement, when we talk to our employees, two of the things that continue to come up as themes that we'll continue to work with our employees on is training is really key to us. As we bring in these new technologies, we have to find the capacity to improve the skills and knowledge of the existing workforce we have. And so with every project we do now, we really highlight training plans and knowledge transfer and how we're going to get the existing workforce up to speed on the new technologies and find ways to do that. I'll just mention in passing, we will be coming back to you in February to talk about an idea we have similar to what we had in place in San Francisco, where we have a master services agreement that we think will speed up the cycle time to bring in some of these expert resources. And we'll be talking to you more about that in February. We did a large RFP process, and we'll be bringing the results back to you in February to talk about how we think a master services agreement could benefit the county and really speed up the implementation cycle for some of these projects. And then in closing, because I know you have a big agenda and I don't want to monopolize it, just a few things to mention. I know we try to communicate a lot through emails and in briefings like this, but we have redesigned the ISD intranet site. I'm sure that's a hot link on your browser you go to all the time, but we're hoping to make it a more popular site that you go and check out. A lot of questions come up, well, how are we doing on different projects? What are your performance metrics? What new happened last week or this week? And so in the redesign of the new ISD intranet site, and I've published the URL up there if you haven't looked at it, want to go check it out sometime. We're publishing our performance metrics now. All of our projects, we'll have monthly status reports on all of our projects online as to which ones have been completed, which ones are underway. So you'll be able to see what we're working on. And of course, the common links for our service center and email and things like that. So that's a brief summary, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I'll try to leave time for that.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions?
I have a couple. Thank you, Mr. President. Just curious, Mr. Walton, if county workers have access to the network now, similar to what we have, where we put in the passcode and we can look at our email and calendars and that sort of thing?
On mobile devices or on their? That is I mentioned a policy or pass. We've been working with county council and the department heads and county manager's office. We're probably 30 days away from announcing a new policy that would enable that. We just want to make sure we're, from a policy standpoint, clear with employees about what their responsibilities are related to that privilege. Certainly the technology is in place to enable that. I think we just want to be thoughtful about informing the employees about, after hours access and Public Information Act type of things when they use personal devices. So we've gone through a few cycles of that, and I believe we'll probably be ready in the next 30 days to announce that to the county.
Thank you. Just one last thing, group-wise.
That is on the project list. We've spent the
group-wise.
Group-wise.
Wasn't it that we were going to replace that in December or January or February?
We're starting that process. In our eagerness to start so many projects, we unfortunately had to push that one out farther than I would have liked. We had to get a number of contracts underway for the payroll system and the CGI system. So if you look at our updated project list online, you'll see what it is online. We'll show you what the start and end date is. We'll be meeting with everyone. It'll be an incremental rollout. It's not going to be a come to work one day and everyone's on it. We're going to take it on as a department at a time and hopefully prioritize you all first to some of the key customers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just want to thank you, John, for your email updates, which I think are also very helpful to keep us informed. So you've done a very good job. I think informing the board about a very complex area, so I appreciate that.
Maybe if I could just make one comment. I also appreciate, I was going to ask that question, but you hit it towards the end of continuing to train our employees. I think that was a complaint we heard from our employees that, it was very difficult to be living in this 21st, 22nd century, wherever we're going here, because they were still back in the 19th century. So it's nice to continue that training. I know that our employees are always concerned about the agile workforce, but I do think by bringing others in that have been able to stay up on things, there's a lot to learn there as well. And so, while it's a good balance, I think your department is desirable for the agile workforce, and I really look forward to seeing what you can do and moving these projects along because of that. So I thank you for being innovative with all the tools we're trying to provide.
Thank you. Any other comments? Again, thanks again, John. All right, Marlene Finley, it's now your turn to address the Board of Supervisors.
Dazzle the board.
Good morning, President Pine and honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Byers. Today I'm before you to seek your approval to move forward with a grant application for the Mid-Coast Multimodal Trail. This would be a $500,000 grant application to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority Measure A funds for pedestrian and bicycle program. as well as a $50,000 match from the ERAF funds reserves for park acquisition and development budget. So that would be our 10% match. A little bit about the Mid-Coast Multimodal Trail. This is segment 1 of what would be a 4-segment trail. It would go from Alta Avenue in Miramar to Coronado Street in El Granada. And it's proposed for the east side of Highway 1 to provide for commuter access. That's for bicyclists, walkers, also strollers, to get, as you know, many of the residents are on the east side of Highway 1 as well as the schools. And to alleviate congestion, it was found in the Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Study that this would be a high priority, this multimodal trail. So let's see. Also, this has received support, as you could tell in your package, from a wide variety of groups, including the Cabrillo Unified School District, the El Granada Parent-Teacher Organization, the Mid-Coast Community Council, the City of Half Moon Bay, Coastside Chamber of Commerce, and the Committee for Green Foothills, to name a few. So a broad range of support. And this would be a grant application for the planning and permitting part of the project, so for segment 1. And with that, I turn it back to you.
Okay. Any questions? Looks like Mr. Supervisor Horsley.
Let me just make a couple of comments. First, I want to thank my legislative aide, Nicholas Calderon, who's really worked on this for a long period of time, and unfortunately, he just left the room. But in any case, where this multimodal trail actually conceptualized comes from. Oh, there he is, Nicholas Calderon. Done a great job on this project, but it really comes out of that. It was the Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Study that the board approved, and I think it was 2011, 2012. There were actually two different separate studies. And the idea of this trail is actually it spans goes from the city into the county. Well, as Marlene said, it's from Coronado Street in El Granada and always to the connects to the Half Moon Bay's commuter trail system, the Naomi Patridge Trail. Her trail actually, or the city of Half Moon Bay, is actually on the west side, but we have to cross over to the east side. It just doesn't work on the west side, so that's why we've recommended going on the east side. It really works much better. One of the things that you know that the on the coast side has a tremendous amount of traffic on weekends from visitors from throughout the entire Bay Area, and it is so crushing that it really is very difficult for locals to get from one village to the next. The idea of this parallel trail, multimodal trail, is to allow an alternate form of transportation for the villages from El Granada into Half Moon Bay. Eventually, we'll continue working on connecting the entire coast, so it gives local people an opportunity to use bicycles, pedestrians, instead of having that traffic is so choked. If you've ever gone over during Pumpkin Festival or the Dream Machine or on a sunny weekend, you realize how difficult it is. So the local people find themselves really confined to their homes. Mm-hmm. This parallel trail will give them an opportunity to move without being stuck in that traffic. The other real advantage is that, one of the things that we're trying to do is get children to walk to schools. Mm-hmm. This will allow them to safely walk to schools without going back and forth across the highway. So I really, first of all, I'm appreciative of my staff as well as Marlene for working on this. And so I would like to, unless there's other questions, move approval of the resolution authorizing the submittal of the grant application for $500,000 to the Transportation Authority's Measure A bike and pedestrian program.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. Any further comments? Yes, once again, we have Miss Lenny Roberts, who would like to speak on this issue. Excuse me.
Actually, slightly confused because I put in the slip for Alpine Trail, but I realized also, so sorry. So if you can keep that for Alpine Trail.
Sure.
Number 11.
You can support this as well.
I do have one for number, all right, okay.
We're on top of it.
All right, excellent. So this was also in this is part of Measure A. It was specifically referenced it's in the TA's strategic plan as well. So Parallel Trail, as it was called, and it's getting renamed, I guess, is a really wonderful alternative method of transportation. And I think for the coast side, it's going to be sort of I think it's going to be a poster child for how we can encourage people to use their feet or their legs or their horse to get to where they need to go on the east side of Highway 1. Thanks.
Thanks, Laddie.
Mr. President, I just might mention sort of parenthetically that last Friday there was another pedestrian automobile accident in El Granada on Highway 1 to underscore the need for safety that this trail represents as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you a question. Supervisor Horsley and I sit on the Transportation Authority.
Oh, yeah.
Can we vote on this?
We need you for the other one.
Never thought of that.
I did. I just did.
I think so.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think you're permitted to vote on this particular matter. Yeah.
All right, and for the record, you were moving approval of both the items?
I am.
All right, so both item A and B, item B being the
Authorizing the appropriation transfer request.
the 10%, right. Okay, we are now going to take a 5-minute break. When we reconvene, we will.
Do we have to vote?
Oh, did we vote? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I thought we did.
No.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I always
I should have asked this year.
All right, we're now reconvening the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, January 28th. The next item is a resolution concerning an initial study and mitigated negative declaration for the Alpine Road Trail Improvement Project. Mr. Porter will give a presentation, and then we have a number of speakers as well. Mr. Porter.
And Mr. Byers. It's my pleasure to present the department's recommendation to certify an initial study mitigated negative deck for a project to rehabilitate the Alpine Road Trail within the unincorporated county, and also as a result of those improvements, perform 3 site repairs, erosion site repairs along the length of the trail. This slide shows you the portion of the trail within unincorporated county. To the north is the city of Menlo Park, where they have completed an improvement to the trail project. And to the south is the town of Portola Valley, where they too have completed a portion of the trail improvement project. The project itself consists of rehabilitating about 1.8 miles of asphalt trail. The board directed the department to simply replace what is there now, and that's what this project does. We're going in and rehabilitating the trail either by pulverizing and replacing asphalt, or in areas where the asphalt is in good condition, providing a slurry seal on top of that. There are some areas, spot locations, where we're relocating the trail slightly to miss trees, and also in areas where the trail is pinched down to less than 4 feet. We've widened that to 4 feet so that we meet ADA requirements for a trail such as that. But there is no change in alignment. If you've walked the trail, you'll notice that there are 3 locations where the creek that runs adjacent to the trail is eroding along the side of that trail, and those 3 locations need to be rehabilitated. The reason is the trail itself, if nothing is done, will end up eroding further and narrowing further. And also there are utilities near that trail that need to be protected. So going from the bottom, which would be the south end, is Site 1. In order to mitigate that location, we're looking at a 110-foot long block wall. At Site 2, we're looking at an 80-foot long soldier pile wall, and I'll explain more about what that means. And at Site 3, we're looking at a 70-foot long cast-in-place concrete wall. This slide gives you an idea of some of the different feeling or looks of the trail in different areas. The upper slide is south of I-280, and it's more of a pedestrian trail with a bit of separation from Alpine Road. The lower slides are actually north of 280. As you can see, there's some narrow areas behind a guardrail in the Stanford Weekend Acres area. And there's also portions of the trail that go off away from Alpine Road into a more rural setting. So for bank stabilization, we'll talk a bit about Site 1 here. This is Site 1 looking north. We proposed a small retaining wall in this location. We're looking at a concrete block wall, and the best way to imagine that is a lot of residential folks use keystone blocks in their retaining walls at home. Similar concept. We're building up a block wall and replacing the trail in that location. That wall height will vary, but it will be a maximum of 3 feet and mostly less than 3 feet. This will show you that location and the need for that. The pink line is where the base of the wall will be. You can see to the left of that is a little tiny flag, which is an existing gas line. So unless something is done in this location, we will be jeopardizing the integrity of that gas line. So we're proposing to build that wall to hold up the trail and preserve the infrastructure. Site 2 is another location that we're proposing to repair. You can see it's a fairly steep, eroded site that needs to be looked at. In this location, you can see that yellow flag. There's a PG&E line, a gas line, which is a 6-inch main on the edge of that slope that we would like to protect, as well as the trail. In this case, we will be building a soldier beam. It's called a soldier beam pile wall. Basically what that is you drill in piers and you drop in what people refer to as an I-beam. And in between the I-beams, the posts, you put in lagging, concrete lagging, and that holds up the wall. You see them all over. They're pretty common, but that's what they're technically called, is a soldier, easier said than done, right? Soldier pile beam wall. At Site 3, this is the location that gets a lot of attention. This is just north of the I-280 interchange. And at this location, we're looking to put a cast-in-place concrete wall. The reason why we chose a cast-in-place wall was because there's overhead utilities in this location, and you simply can't get a drill rig in there to drill foundation piers and work underneath those power lines. So the best alternative here is a cast-in-place wall. You'll see the pictures of the proposed base of wall. At this location, we're also proposing some biotechnical treatments, which means after we construct the wall, we'll put back soils and plants in that location to stabilize the bank. Oops, excuse me. This is a shot from above where you can see the extent of the erosion. That cracking in that area is the trail. And when you see that kind of longitudinal cracking, it's a sign that the reinforcement or base material under that trail is falling away, and the asphalt is literally falling into the creek. So that needs to be shored up, or will fall unless we do something about this. This is a cross-section of what the cast-in-place wall will look like. We will go in and construct the wall, come back with rock erosion protection and soil on top of that, which will be planted. In terms of the public notification process, we followed the CEQA process as required by CEQA law. The document, the draft ISMND, was sent to the state clearinghouse. But in addition, we did several other notifications. We published in a newspaper twice. I believe it was the San Francisco Examiner. We also sent out emails to interested parties and made hard and soft copies available at various locations, both at the county and out near to the project for people to review. The actual comment period was between August 14th and September 15th. We received 20 comment letters. Each of those comment letters was reviewed. Responses to comments were provided, and those are included as Attachment A to the resolution. The department actually retained a consultant to do this work. We looked and found an expert in the field. ESA is the consulting firm that we are using. They have over 40 years experience, and they specialize in environmental documents such as this. One of the benefits of ESA is they do have the expertise within the company to address the issues that have arisen on this project and many other projects that they've worked on in the past. The next few slides summarize the comments that we received. We're not going to go through each individual comment, but we have grouped them into specific areas. So we've had comments regarding what the trail is called, whether it's public use or multi-use. We've had comments regarding the biotechnical treatments, whether it was feasible in locations. And some of these comments have been added to or incorporated into the ISM&D. And other comments were not incorporated for the reasons that are described in those comments. For instance, the discussion of the multi-use trail versus a public use trail. The description of the trail is included in the Parks Master Plan, and we used what the description was in the Parks Master Plan. In terms of cultural resources, we did receive a comment regarding areas of cultural significance within that area. We have amended the ISM&D to make sure that when we are excavating and working in those areas, we'll have an archaeologist on site. In terms of biological resources, we looked at the work that we had done in there and felt that the mitigation that was proposed was adequate to address those comments. In terms of the loss of trees, we looked at that, and this project will comply with the county's tree ordinance that is administered through the planning department. There was a comment on hydrology. If we install these erosion protection measures, how will that change the functioning of the creek? And in one location in particular, Site 2, there is a narrowing of the creek cross-section. So as a result of that comment, a hydraulic analysis was performed and found that as a result of the final improvements, you will likely see somewhere around an 8% increase in the velocity of the water in that area. If you look at the way that those calculations work, that is within the statistical accuracy of a calculation such as that. But we do acknowledge that there is a potential for some erosion in that area. If we do nothing in that location, there's also a potential for some erosion in that area. So that comment was addressed in that way. I won't go through all these individually. We are modifying the traffic control plan as a result of the comments we received there. In terms of public notification, we received comments that we didn't adequately notify folks. As I mentioned previously, we did not only meet CEQA requirements, but went above and beyond that and tried to reach out to folks that were interested in the project. In terms of mitigation, we've looked at sites both within the project limit and outside of the project limit for mitigation. We won't know exactly what the amount of mitigation will be until we get through the permitting process, which I'll talk about later. But that has been addressed within the ISM&D in the comments. In terms of alternatives for the walls, we actually did look at several alternatives. I mentioned when I talked about Site 3, the cast-in-place wall. We looked at a variety of options there, but found that based upon the limitations of that site, that type of construction makes the most sense. In terms of the ISM&D compliance process, as I mentioned, the comment period was August 14th to September 15th. The board will now consider the draft ISM&D, including our modifications as we felt were appropriate based on the comments. But what's important is when we received those comments, it did not reveal any additional potential significant impacts beyond what was already studied. And all impacts are less than significant and can be mitigated. In terms of compliance, a mitigation monitoring report has been prepared, and that's included as Exhibit B to the resolution. And we are recommending that you certify this ISM&D to complete the CEQA process. But we're not done there. As you can imagine, there are a variety of permits that need to be received before we can begin construction. And those agencies will be looking at this project, and based upon the area that they oversee, we will likely get additional comments from them, which could modify the design or change the mitigations that we've identified at this point. I've listed several of those agencies that we'll be working with as we move forward. From a timeline perspective, we actually have 90% plans complete. We've gone through the public comment period, and we've submitted a variety of permit applications to agencies. So based on your board's action today, we will be completing the design package. We'll also be waiting to get the permits before we can actually do the work. When we'll get those permits, we're hoping to get those by July, but that is dependent upon when those agencies respond. And that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Mr. Porter, with the agencies that you have to get additional permits from, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife, have you had initial conversations with them, or are you just submitting permits? Have you sat down with any of these groups to kind of walk through what you're intending to do to get some kind of early feedback?
Our staff, when we go through and apply for those permits, have I don't want to say connections. They know the people that they work with on the other side. So I can't speak to specifics with each agency or organization, but when we work with those different organizations, we typically go back and forth and alert them as to what we're doing when we submit those permits. But I can't say specifically which agencies were contacted and what those conversations were like.
The reason I say that is sometimes, the timeliness of things is difficult when you're getting these permitting things, that if you have the ability to have a conversation first so we don't submit for something that's very likely to get shut down, then it takes a lot longer. So I just, it'd be nice if you get an opportunity to talk with them as you're going through the process.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, actually, I had a question that actually has to do with the letter from Stanford, and I just won't go into the whole thing, but basically it really talks about site number 3, and it says we suggest an alternative in this area that could be explored, which consists of realignment of the creek to the east upstream site of Site 3 to adjoin another drainage coming across, et cetera, and you probably read this also, so I don't need to go over it. But what they basically are saying that they're open to discussing this approach if it would result in retaining a natural creek riparian corridor instead of a concrete wall along 70 feet of the creek bank. If you did move to the, I don't know if you've talked to Stanford about, and I know you don't particularly want to realign the creek, but I assume that would take more hydrological studies and but have we talked to Stanford, and what's their willingness? Are they willing to pay for it, or?
So let me try to answer that question. The comment letter from Stanford did actually discuss relocating or realigning the creek to another location away from that site. The response to that was that is outside of the project scope.
Even if they did that, you'd still have to do something about the erosion there, I assume. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
We would still need to do something to hold up the utilities and the roadway in that location. But in the event that we work, and to finish my thought, the response to Stanford basically was that relocating the creek was outside of the scope of this project. So we were directed by your board to replace the creek in place, replace the trail in place. And in investigating what that entailed, we found these 3 locations that really needed to be repaired. If we were to realign the creek, there would be several things that would need to happen. First of all, we don't have any property rights to the area that Stanford is talking about. There would need to be an agreement, some sort of easement or authorization for us to work in that location. Second, that is a substantial modification to the project. So at a minimum, we would need to look at another initial study because the project has changed and determine what the extent of the impacts and possible mitigations could be for a realignment of that creek. But at this point, we're not recommending that or suggesting that because that's outside of the scope of the project that we were directed to proceed with.
Did you actually talk to Stanford, though, about this?
I have not talked to Stanford, no.
Okay. Any particular reason why not?
Again, what we've been trying to do was to provide as quickly as possible a rehabilitation project for this trail and follow your board's direction. If we were to get into a situation where we relocated that creek, I could see an extensive environmental review process moving forward that is going to delay this project several months, if not a year or two, if we pursue that option.
Okay. Just there's another another letter from the Committee for Green Foothills, and again, you probably addressed this to some extent, but it does talk about the upper slope and planted rock slope protection as a footing to prevent scour at Site 2. There are important features. It goes on to say help minimize hydrological impact on the dam immediately upstream and downstream. However, there's nothing to indicate whether similar biotechnical measures will be installed on the banks immediately adjacent to the Soldier Pile wall. Do we end up increasing the speed of the flows, and is that going to have a negative impact on further erosion of that creek?
So through the President, to answer your question, we did look at the possibility of bioremediation at that site, but it was determined that with higher flows, the bioremediation would likely not work because it would be inundated and simply not have a chance to grow. But we've also identified that that's a mitigation that needs to occur. So we will be doing mitigation at a location somewhere other than that along the creek to make up for the area that we could not bioremediate adjacent to that wall. Now, in terms of increase in velocity, I mentioned earlier that the calculation showed there's potentially an 8% increase in the velocity of the water at that location. If you look at the accuracies of those calculations, statistically, 8% falls on the far end of what is accurate for a calculation of that type. But I think we can acknowledge if the cross-section reduces, you're probably going to see a faster velocity. So what does that mean? If there's erosion at that location, there will probably be erosion lower down in the creek bed, which is a different type of erosion than what's occurring now. And by different, there's larger size gravels down there. So it will likely push that a bit further downstream as opposed to the wall right now, which is a more fine material that is going into the creek. And I'm not an expert in this type of thing, but fundamentally, those are the processes that could happen if we do or don't do this project. And by the way, I would be remiss to mention, I do have Allison Chan from ESA here, who is an expert in these type things, who can answer technical questions much better than I can.
Okay, I got one other question. Again, this is in the project calls, I don't know if it still does, it calls for the installation of concrete planter boxes on the proposed walls at Site 2 and 3. Did you take them out? Are they still there? I mean, how does one maintain planter boxes in this environment?
Through the President, we actually removed those.
Oh, you did?
Okay. Great comments. You're right. Okay. It's not realistic.
Okay.
It's been removed.
I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Slocum.
Thank you. Just one quick question. Are there, if by chance this doesn't go forward today and it gets delayed, let's say, till our next meeting, are there some harsh consequences for that delay?
Through the President, no, there's not, because we're currently in a permitting process with the state agencies, and I think our critical path is really in the permitting process. If your board chooses to move this or delay this decision for 2 weeks, I don't see that as having an impact on the schedule.
Thank you.
I had two questions, Mr. Porter. The document that was contained in the board package, the response to the mitigative negative deck comments, I believe that was made public for the first time on Friday. Is that correct? There was, I mean, I seem to have I think I have an email where it was distributed, or stakeholders were made aware that this was available. I just wanted to confirm. I don't think it was available earlier than that, as best I can tell.
I believe you're correct. I know we sent out an email when the board packet was published, alerting those that had commented that those comments were available.
Right.
But in terms of prior notification, we typically wait until your board has an opportunity to see those before we send them out.
Yeah, this is always a challenge with the the 72 hours between
Right.
when you have a complex set of material. And then again, it's just just a procedural question. So all these comments, some of the things they did result in some changes in the initial study, the negative deck. But that's actually that's a document in itself, right? I mean, I think it'd be helpful for us to have the document as amended, if I'm describing that properly.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. So there's two ways to do this. We can either go in and actually revise the entire document to include the changes that were suggested and recommended through this process, or we can simply incorporate those comments and those revisions as an additional document with the draft document. So in finalizing that, you basically finalize both documents, and that becomes your completed ISMND. We had anticipated simply approving the draft ISMND with the comments as you see it here. If we do go that other route, we would obviously, it's certainly possible. We need to work with our consultant on that.
Yeah, no, either approach would be fine, and maybe the more efficient one is the latter, where you just append it. But I think it'd be helpful if we could see the whole thing in its entirety. In other words, there's an initial document that wasn't in the board package. All we had were the comments to that document. Is my point.
Sure. If your board would like us to do that, we can certainly do that.
I guess one of those things, careful what you wish for, but okay. If no other questions of Mr. Porter, we'll take some speakers. I'd like to start with Catherine Palter from Stanford, since that letter I think is of great interest to the board. So if you need to take a little more time in 2 minutes, please do so.
Okay, thank you, President Pine and honorable supervisors. I am Catherine Palter. I'm director of Stanford's Land Use and Environmental Planning Office. And I have some prepared statements, but I can also clarify some of the comments that went on the draft as well. So our comment letter on the draft mitigated neg deck expressed our support for the project's objectives of improving the Alpine Road Trail, but we also stated significant concern about the proposed major bank stabilization solutions. We suggested modifying the design to use bioengineered bank stabilization methods, which could be accommodated by shifting the creek over onto Stanford's land slightly, such as was recently done in the Portola Valley Trail project, completed in the last couple of years. The county's responses to our comments stated that the project design will not be altered. In addition, the hydrology study that was conducted as a result of our comments concluded that at Site 2, the creek channel flow velocity would increase over 8% as a result of the new concrete structure and decreasing the profile of the creek. But no statement was made about the resulting erosion potential of that increased velocity in that area. Stanford has developed its lands around Los Trancos and San Francisco Creeks with an effort to preserve their natural state and environmental value, and the proposed structural bank stabilization solutions will alter that condition. Our preference would have been to work collaboratively with the county to achieve the project's objectives with a more aesthetic, non-structural approach, even if that meant using some of Stanford's lands. We understand the safety considerations and urgency of this project and why you might choose to approve the staff proposal. However, if you agree that developing more environmentally sensitive improvements would be desirable, Stanford is ready and willing to work with the county staff towards such an outcome.
Are there questions for Ms. Palter? Okay, then we will take our next speaker, Arlene Lindblom.
Good morning. My name is Arlene Lindblom. I live on at 20 Stowe Lane in Menlo Park, intersection Alpine Road. And I'm opposed to the resolution certifying this project. An important reminder is that Lower Alpine, except for Ladera, up to Ladera and Portola Valley, has a path, not a trail, definitely not a multi-purpose trail. It was with dismay and more to have received from Public Works only a weekend and a day's advance notice of this meeting's agenda item. We in Stanford Weekend Acres had been led to believe that repair to Alpine Road or San Francisco Creek roads would be minimal. So to read, or actually in the time given, skim the 190-page negative declaration report by the environmental consulting group ESA was overwhelming. The report describes sinking of large pilings, altering existing slopes, building high walls, cementing creek banks, and disrupting again use of the heavily trafficked Alpine Road, this time for at least 6 months. It's all way too much. This area has already been studied, discussed, voted upon many times, and for legitimate reasons, major projects have been rejected. All this information is on record and should be reviewed. It's unnecessary, in my opinion, to attempt another reworking of nature. Past efforts have resulted in problems downstream. Please, less is better. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker, Lenny Roberts.
Good morning, still good morning. I'm Lenny Roberts. I'm speaking for Committee for Green Foothills, and we have had a long interest in this project. I do support the proposed rehabilitation of the trail. I would like to echo the concerns that Catherine Palter has raised. I do think that having a bioengineered solution for all of those hard structures is far preferable. And I would really appreciate it if the board, understanding what you directed the Public Works Department to do when you directed in the budget that they come up with a project. I think that would behoove the board to take the time to ask Public Works to work with Stanford and come up with a mutually agreeable bioengineered solution for all of 3 of those locations. And even though we hope for rain, I think taking the time now to do this right is going to be of real benefit to the creek. I mean, the county should really be a leader in how to do creek protection correctly, because we have lots of downstream concerns as well. And I think if you can show how it can be done, Portola Valley has, to the maximum extent feasible, I think that would really be a wise thing to do at this point. There may be a way to improve the trail part of it, and separate out these 3 problem areas and, do the rest of it so that the trail users can have the, benefit now of improving the trail. I'd also like to second the concerns that Jerry Hearn emailed to you as a longtime creek advocate for San Francisco Creek. He says, though the proposed project is not the worst approach to fixing the problem that can be imagined, there are other possibilities that have not been investigated that could lead to a better and perhaps cheaper solution to the erosion issues that threaten the trail and the road. In a number of comments, the idea of reshaping the channel to move it further from the road is proposed, and one of those comments came from Catherine Palter. The approach would require Stanford land, but she and others of her colleagues consider this to be a viable option in the best interest of the creek and are more than willing to work with the county to pursue this option. So I would just like to second Jerry's comments as well. Thank you.
I had one question for you, Annie, if I may. We've heard and read a little bit about this idea of potentially reconfiguring the creek, which sounds like a substantial project. It's something that the board may want to learn more about. But assuming just for a minute, just for purpose of discussion, that we left the creek stays where it is. When we talk about bio solutions, do you have concerns? Are there bio solutions beyond changing the creek positioning?
Well, I'm not an expert in bioengineering, but I think there have been some good demonstrations of that on the Portola Valley stretch, which did have to do some hard surface protection, but it incorporated bioengineered techniques as well. So I would I think Catherine can speak more to that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think one of the limiting factors in these projects can be the amount of right-of-way that you have.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a narrow right-of-way, then it sort of necessitates a big concrete wall. And so there was actually kind of two options in our initial comment letter. One was an actual realignment of the creek, and that's really not what we explored that a little bit further in the interim. We're not really talking about that now. Now we're talking about something that's more along the lines of what happened in Portola Valley. Whereas if you just shift the creek, then you have a little more room to play with. So you still have the structural element, but you've got more of a chance to put things in front of it. You know, it might have some logs, that sort of thing. And that's what necessitates going onto Stanford's lands. So once the Portola Valley project was done, we were able to redraw the right-of-way. But right now it's a very constraining sort of element. And that's why we want to make clear we have that flexibility to go and create the space needed for these more sensitive solutions.
Could I just ask, would Stanford be willing to participate in the financing of this project?
I think at this point we're talking about we haven't looked at it in any detail. So it's really seeing what this thing would involve. And, it may be that we go back to the original, but it may be that we come up with a better solution, and then we would look to see if it is indeed. It doesn't necessarily mean it's more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for your input. Another question.
Just out of curiosity, and this may be for Mr. Porter, I'm not sure, or maybe Ms. Poulter. You have a sort of a path where you're looking at us approving today, which means we have to deal with these different agencies. So if we were to engage in looking at shifting the creek, are we going to have greater issues around with these agencies by actually moving things that currently exist?
Through the President, I think it would depend upon the scope of the shift of the creek. We would definitely need to redo the ISM&D because now you're changing the project. So we would go through that process again. But it's really hard to say until we know the extent of what the shift would be.
Right.
But we would be not necessarily starting from zero, but we would have to go through this process again.
Can I ask you one more question? And is it possible, from your perspective, of doing things on a parallel track? In other words, moving forward with the direction, because we have to go through these agencies anyway, and flesh out their concerns about this initial project, and at the same time, on a parallel track, look at what the potentials could be? Because as Ms. Poulter said, we don't know. We don't know what's there, whether it would make a difference, not make a difference, what the permitting would be to shift the creek in a different direction, or what impacts it would have. So is it possible to, in your mind, to be able to move forward with what we have, and as we're doing that, take a look at this potential alternative so that we don't, if it doesn't work, we don't lose the time with those permitting agencies?
Certainly, through the President, I think we can certainly do that. I think we need to be very careful about what we're doing, though, because the ISM&D is certifying a project that's described in the document.
Right.
So we should probably, one way to do this is to go through, complete our project, study what this realignment might be, and so in addition to our project, look at relocating the creek, which would in and of itself become a new project that we'd study again. But I think we'd have to be very thoughtful in how we proceeded along those paths to make sure that we continue to comply with the CEQA requirements. But I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
We have two more speakers. Janet Davis.
Good morning. I've lived beside the creek for almost 50 years, and what is proposed won't solve the perceived problem, just create more. The eroded areas coincide with the county's storm drain locations, at least one of which, according to the State Water Board, is transmitting PCBs from slack. And this is under mitigation right now. Another problem is that Site 3 is where the cars routinely go over the bank and into the creek. Stanford and its consultants, such as Balance Hydrology, have spent decades studying every single aspect of the creek, its tributaries, and everything that affects it and the dam, about which Public Works is totally ignorant. Stanford has pledged to help, and it would be foolish not to take them up on their opportunity. if you're concerned about utility lines, you should really start worrying about the sewer along the bank of the creek, specifically behind 2469 Alpine. And there's another alternative. You could move the road over a bit because the median is very wide at that area. You could chop a bit off that. And lastly, as to notice, the only way that anybody in Stanford Weekend Acres or in Vines got to hear about this project was courtesy of Dawn, who got me a copy. I was the one who notified Stanford. I notified the newspapers. Nobody knew a darn thing about this project until I told them on Friday, I think it was, of last week. And I think that's disgraceful. I think there should have been an outreach to the public in that area, many of whom flooded in '98. And to say that 8% doesn't make any difference in velocity is absolute nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lavinda Beal.
President Pine, other honorable supervisors and staff, thank you especially Mr. Holland for the long hours you've put in on this project. You were one of the moderators at a community meeting on this topic some years ago. So we've talked about it a long time. I know you've been around many years, Mr. Slocum, but this isn't a new subject for most folks in this room. How many of you like cooking with gas? I really like a hot shower. Protecting that gas, the utility line, isn't something we can spend another 5 or 10 or 25 years talking about. I very much respect the environment of a healthy creek, the steelhead, the recreational opportunities there, but safety is a big thing for all of us. As a local resident since 1978, a teenager, a young professional, a mother, a friend, a daughter, we need a safe way to get to town. And the road, the trail, which is a multi-use trail per the parks document, is falling into the creek. And we're somewhat saved by the drought we're in, though of course, indeed, I'm praying for rain too. We need to address this sooner rather than later. We've been lucky to have as much time to work on it as we have. So thank you for, as Ms. Tissier proposed, a parallel track I think is a great idea, to work with what we have and to work to improve it with bioengineered solutions as best we can, especially if they're within the same cost parameters. I'm all for it. Keep forward, move forward. We've already worked on this for years. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We have no further public speakers. Ms. Porter, would you like to add any other comments, or you don't have to, but okay. All right, then board discussion.
Well, I'd actually like to, I would make a motion to actually direct Public Works to work with Stanford to see if we can come up with a mutually agreeable solution. I have no particular objection to having a dual track approach as well. And you know, I share the frustration with this. This was one of the first issues that came up on the board when I first got on the board. It's been around for a long time. I would love to see the path improve, but at the same time, I think there's a number of questions about the viability of this project that we really should talk to Stanford to see if we can come up with a mutually agreeable solution.
Or I'm sorry, did Supervisor Groom?
Thank you. You know, I do remember telling Public Works that we wanted to just repair what existed. But and that was a year or so ago, I guess. But having received Mr. Hearn's letter, who I know well from my days on the San Francisco Crito Creek JPA, I really respect his opinion and his judgment. And so I would like to take a shortest time as possible to suggest that we do meet with Stanford and do look at some of the things that Mr. Hearn suggested. He knows the creek about as well as anybody, I think, and would like to kind of make sure, see if he is correct in his comments in his letter that he sent to us on January 20th.
First off, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I really do think we need to try to do something on a parallel track. And I'll tell you why. If we go through the permitting process with these state agencies, if they don't agree with what we've got because they think we're going to be eroding a creek bed or we're going to be doing something wrong, they're not going to permit it. So, I mean, they are sort of like the higher authority, if you will. I have no problem trying to work with Stanford to see if there's yet another idea, but what I worry about is, you know, we take more time and more time and more time, and we don't know if there's a solution there. So I don't think we should hold up on what we have here and give a certain period of time, maybe the same 6 months, to just see if there's an alternative that could supersede it after, if it's a better project. But, you know, until we know that, you know, in the comments about Public Works is, we directed Public Works. This is no secret. They've been at this. We asked them to do this. This is no secret. They're very sensitive to us getting things before the rest of the public does, because that's the appropriate way to do it. You know, yes, it's a lot to read, but, you know, we read it all weekend too. So I take offense that you know, that things are being sneaky. This has been going on for a long time. I like the fact that Stanford is interested, and it's important that you're interested. And if there's something else we can look at, I'm certainly happy to do that. But I think, you know, to push this off and push this off, and then find out at the end of the day we don't have something, and then we push the agencies off another 6 months to a year. And if something happens to the gas line, or if the road crumbles, then where are we then? I mean, we're in a world of hurt. So I would suggest that we move this forward with the caveat that we give it 4 months or 3 months to take a look at what Stanford's suggesting and see if it really has some merit. And if we have to bring in a consultant to work on it with us to move it along, so we'll have an answer, and we can then bring that back. And if that seems to be a better solution and we have to push it out, that's fine. But I don't know that we have a better solution right now. So, you know, with that, I'm happy to make a motion to move this forward and continue with the process through the state and the feds, and also at the same time spend 2 or 3 months working with Stanford, whatever it would take, to see if what their ideas are really have merit. And I appreciate that.
Maybe if I could do a follow-up question. I understand where you're going, and you know, we got to keep this process moving. And so I guess a technical question is, to Mr. Porter and perhaps Mr. Byers, does the initial study negative declaration need to be approved/certified before these conversations proceed with the regulators? Or can this parallel track happen without a formal certification of this initial study negative declaration? And I mean, you said something earlier that does make the parallel track is good, but under one scenario, you know, perhaps this creek shifting does make sense, and I guess that would have to go back to the regulator. So the sequencing is a little bit tricky. I actually have another thought on that, but let me just keep the question narrow. Is to do the parallel track, do you need a certified IS negative declaration?
President Pine, that's an interesting question. So I would say, for us to proceed along a parallel track, again, I mentioned we have to be very careful about what the project is.
Yeah.
So as long as we proceed with the ISMND as presented to you, it doesn't need to be approved today. We're still waiting for comments from the permitting agencies, but we cannot start construction until we have approved CEQA. In terms of kind of this parallel track and what that might be, I think a lot of it depends on sequencing. If we keep going down this path and in parallel we go ahead and study relocating the creek, I think the determination on a change in the ISMND would really be determined based upon how those two projects interact and how that affects the project that's before you today. So it's one of those kind of yet to be determined things. And if Mr. Byers has further comments, I'd certainly.
You know, I think Mr. Porter articulated that very well.
Okay, well, I mean, that's an important clarification then, that we don't have to take action today to pursue the parallel track. You know, another, I guess, recommendation I would have, though, is, you know, the Stanford proposal, you know, if that all makes sense, you know, it's going to raise some big questions like the timing, the cost, and the timing and the schedule, right? And whether it really becomes a new project, which probably is likely to me intuitively. So, I mean, I think it'd be helpful to have you come back to the board. You know, 2 weeks is probably too quick, but maybe in a month. I think by then we ought to know, you know, whether this thing has potential. Because if we think it has promise, then we'd have to make the hard decision of whether we're gonna. What does that mean? Do we have to do? You know, what does that mean for the schedule? So I would think that, I would hope that in a month that. Excuse me, we understand that, and you have to also speak from the roster when it's called upon. Go ahead.
Can I go back to my original motion? And I don't want to delay this thing permanently, but I
No.
don't think it takes more than 2 weeks to 30 days. And I'd go back and say, ask Public Works to work with Stanford to see if they can come up with a mutually agreeable solution that doesn't require necessarily a new EIR. And that,
yeah.
Well, actually, one of the things, to talk to Mr. Porter, you did talk about the potential of having to do a complete EIR, but just to see if we can come up with a solution that does not require an entirely new IS and negative declaration, and see if there is some mutually agreeable solution that is that can. I don't really want to delay it, but I think it's worthwhile talking to Stanford, and that would be my motion.
Right, I understand that. I'm just emphasizing that when they do come back, one thing they may come back with, yeah, we can do it, but it means, we have to do a bunch of things that would cause delay. And I'd rather hear that sooner or later, and then we'd have to make the hard decision.
Yeah, right.
That's all.
Okay.
I think it's, that's all.
Just a clarification, are you suggesting that we stop what's happening here and just look at that, or are you suggesting we keep
No.
moving forward
No,
as we were?
The parallel track is absolutely fine, because we've clarified that we don't have to take any formal action
Right,
today.
I got that.
So that should go, but that should go on in parallel track. And then meanwhile,
I
as
think that's what
Supervisor Horsley suggests, we
not
would,
re-
if I could just finish.
Okay.
As Supervisor Horsley suggests, the meeting would occur with Stanford.
Yeah.
And they'd come back here no later than 4 weeks.
Right.
And at that point, we either hear, we don't think we can do this, we think we can do it without any real impact on much of anything, or we can do it if you guys are willing to look at new budgets, new schedules, what have you,
Okay. That's
All
my
right.
that's my intent.
Yeah, so yeah, any other comments, and we can recite the motion and take a vote.
I just want to, all I want to do is clarify, because it sounds to me like we're doing exactly what we've talked about,
Yes.
is look at this thing with Stanford, but at the same time, don't stop what we're doing
Yes.
now, but in 30 days, hopefully we'll have
Yeah.
maybe a yay or a nay, or some other,
Yeah,
another maybe.
That's my motion.
Okay.
So does the motion, so that I'm clear, and more importantly, Mr. Porter is clear, would the motion include the certification of the ISD? It would not. Okay, but it would include sort of a dual track without certifying today. Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that Mr. Porter will not be able to represent to the other agencies is that the project has not been technically approved, but it sounds like it's not something you need today.
So let me try to understand. Let me try to repeat what I think we're going to do. So we will make contact with Stanford immediately, discuss what a potential alternate creek alignment or bioremediation type measures could be for this project. Based upon those discussions, we will look at whether that impacts the ISMND as submitted or not. If it does, we'll come back with a schedule and process along with a funding component as to what it would take for us to pursue that different project and hopefully have that to you within the next 30 days. I think, was that accurate?
And concurrent, if this still works for you, you would start your outreach to the regulators on the existing project.
Yes. Yes, and just to clarify on the existing outreach, so we already have permit applications in place. The agencies will be looking at those permit applications based on what we've submitted, which is the current project. If the project changes, that's going to impact those permit reviews. So that'll be included in the timeline that you receive. But we will make outreach to the agencies based upon the current project.
Okay, so do we need to reframe that motion? I think we all know what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that if, I think now I understand, it sounds like Mr. Porter, since he recapped, and you
Right.
all seem to be in agreement with his recap, I think we understand the specifics around the motion. So,
All right, so we had a motion by Supervisor Horsley. I can't recall if he had a second. Second by Supervisor Groom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, I just want to make one last comment. I think it's important that we figure out whether this Stanford alternative has any legs, in the 30, because we don't want to spend too much time on it if it's not going to make sense. Okay. Very good. Thank you, everyone. We move to the county manager's report, where we actually have a parks-related matter, which is the Lomamar property and the funding of that parcel acquisition. Mr. Holland?
Good afternoon, President Pine, honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. Before you is a recommendation to adopt a resolution authorizing the acquisition of the 174-acre Office of Education Lomamar property, which consists of 6 parcels, through a funding agreement with the Peninsula Open Space Trust and potentially a state priority conservation grant for the purchase price of $3.9 million. And the property is connected to the western end of Memorial Park, adjacent to what you might know as the Work Center down there. As a quick background, there's been 3 actions leading up to this. In November 6th, the San Mateo County Board of Education adopted a resolution with the intent to sell, declaring it surplus. On November 5th, your board adopted a resolution supporting the designation of the Lomamar property as a priority conservation area by the Association of Bay Area Governments, which allowed us to apply for a grant of up to $500,000 toward a purchase. On December 10th, your board adopted a resolution supporting a funding agreement with the Peninsula Open Space Trust in the county regarding that future acquisition. The county's been working in partnership with Post to acquire the Lomamar property, actually for a couple of years, trying to find a solution for both us and the Board of Education, and looking at a purchase price of $3.9 million. Post will provide up to $3.9 million of the purchase funding in support of their Heart of the Redwoods campaign as a critical area for redwood forest preservation, habitat, and recreational purposes. And of course, for the county, it will add the property to its park system, and it's got great recreational potential, as well as possibly dispersed camping. The funding will be used by the Office of Education as was intended by the property when they bought it a couple of decades ago to enhance their environmental education program, and that's currently situated at Jones Gulch, and this will allow them to expand on that and enhance it. So with that being said, I'll leave it there and respond to any questions you have. I think it's a great addition to the park system.
Questions for Mr. Holland or
I would
comments?
make a motion to authorize the acquisition of the 174-acre San Mateo County Office of Education Lomamar property.
Second.
I think we do have one speaker, if Ms. Roberts would.
So I'm Lenny Roberts, speaking for Committee for Green Foothills. We've been concerned about this property. I do remember when it was first acquired in the early 1970s, and it was a great idea. They had a great plan for buildings and a whole program built around this site. And the Office of Education ran into problems getting any water or having sewage capacity. So they basically just put those ideas aside and waited, and they actually logged this property. And when they proposed to log it more recently, we convinced the County Superintendent of Schools, Floyd Ganilla, to withdraw his plans to log it. And I think this outcome is a wonderful outcome. It's a win-win-win because the county parks will benefit, the environment will benefit, park visitors will benefit, and the Office of Education will be able to use this money for ensuring the programs for our school kids. And the Camp Jones Gulch has also been trying to find some significant revenues because they need to improve their buildings. So I think we're going to have a really wonderful marriage here of three parties. And Post has been incredibly important in this, in making sure that this happens. I want to also congratulate Post for all the work they've put in on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lenny Roberts. So we have a motion and a second. Is there further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is approved unanimously. County Manager's report.
Mr. President, members of the board, as you know, the governor has proposed a budget for fiscal year 14-15 that includes $108.7 billion in revenues, $106.8 billion in expenditures with a $2.5 billion rainy day reserve. The governor has indicated his intent to be cautious in his expenditures and his recommendations for expenditures, and will look cautiously at any proposed increases in the budget that the legislature may propose. Most of the increased revenue in the governor's budget is set aside to restore previous cuts in education and to pay down the state's budgetary debt. The governor proposes an $850 million cap and trade revenues be used for high-speed rail, which is a controversial proposal, as the board is well aware. As it relates to the county's budget for fiscal year 14-15, basically the budget continues to hold spending levels flat for most health and human service programs with no COLAs. In essence, what that means is our costs of doing business go up. The county absorbs greater costs of those programs. There is some additional spending for the expansion of the Medi-Cal program to provide increased mental health and substance use disorder benefits to individuals that are released from prisons or county jail. In the area of public safety, the governor's budget includes ongoing support for public safety realignment and projects projects increased revenues in all of the realignment accounts in the out years. These increases will be passed on to counties. Of course, CSAC is in the process now of trying to determine the appropriate allocation formulas. The struggle continues to be between those counties that historically sent a lot of people to state prison, which we were not one, and those counties such as ours that in the past had relied on other alternative programs rather than sending people to state prison for a long period of time. I can't predict how those discussions are going to come out. I could tell you, sitting at the table in those, they've gotten fairly unpleasant in recent years or recent months. Some of the unknowns that remain regarding the 109 allocation formula beyond what I've indicated in terms of the participation of the CSAC counties is the continued impact of the local control funding formula on excess ERAF revenues. And of course, that's the school funding. This year, apparently, it had very little, if any, impact, although the triple flip continues to be a problem for us. We're at risk now for $11 million. Interestingly, as the governor pays down the state debt that was used during the years when the state had overspent its budget, that would at some point alleviate the triple flip problem for us. So we should be encouraging the governor to do that, but we should also at the same time encourage the governor and the state to honor their previous commitments to the counties when we entered into the triple flip to begin with. We will continue to monitor the state budget discussions and, of course, provide your board with timely updates as more information becomes available. The second part of this report includes the proposed county legislative program for 2014. We have indicated the changes to the proposed legislative program for prior years in red so that the board can easily track those changes. I won't go into those, but if you have any questions regarding those, I'll certainly do my best to answer them. One final comment, and that is we have tried to really hurry through, I would say, the process for our legislative representatives at the state level And as a result of that, there may have been some problems with the process. We think we probably ought to hit the reset button at this point. Utilize the two firms that had been previously indicated as potential candidates to represent the county on an interim basis for about 3 months to represent the county based on prior commitments. But to go through the RFP process again, to have the committee to review these legislative representation proposals consist of the president and the vice president, Mr. Byers and Mr. Callaghy, as well as Connie, and then to bring back recommendations regarding legislative representative for the county for the remainder of this year, and perhaps into the future, depending on what the nature of those discussions are. In terms of the things that are of highest priority to us, I mentioned the triple flip. I mentioned realignment. And the third thing that we will work judiciously with the legislative representatives, including Senator Steinberg, who have proposed using additional funding that the legislature may receive this year in terms of preschool for all. We think that could substantially be a part of the big lift that the board has previously been very supportive of and has allocated money for. I might add parenthetically that we think the governor's revenue estimates at this point are rather conservative. We think there will be additional money. Senator Steinberg has certainly indicated that from the Senate standpoint, this will be a very high priority item. I think it's something that, as I mentioned earlier, generally benefits the county and the programs we're interested in, and we will be very supportive of that item. If there are any questions or comments that the board may have, I'll be pleased to try to answer them, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Malpe. Comments or questions about the budget report or the legislative agenda? I had two quick comments on the budget report, and then I'll turn to the legislative agenda. There's two opportunities to apply for grants that are highlighted here, one for CalWorks and another one in the State County Assessors Partnership Agreement Program. Do you know if we are, I hope we track those and potentially compete for them.
We are.
Okay. On the legislative agenda, you know, I spent quite a bit of time with this and read through it all. And I actually have a number of points I'd like to make, and I'm just wondering whether the board would like me to do that now, or whether we want to put this out to another meeting. There's a number of minor things, and I think one or two substantive things I'd like to raise, but it is 1:35. So I guess I asked the board, you know, kind of what your hunger level is, and
You know, I wonder if it'd be helpful if maybe each of us could just submit some comments to John on the legislative program. If
That
there's
would-
anything glaring that he
Yeah.
needs to really change, he could bring it back at the next meeting. If it's just tweaks,
yeah.
you know, give us.
Well,
the-
yeah, I would say, yeah, I would think, well, I'll go ahead and preview it. I think most everything would be just either additions or clarifications without controversy. The only thing I'd point out to my colleagues is there is a statement in here that is new, that states that we will not oppose any effort to legalize marijuana. And, you know, I don't feel that I know enough right now as I sit here to come up with that position, particularly since Colorado and Washington are doing some innovative things. I don't know that much about the Colorado-Washington program. So, for example, if a legislator said we should do what Colorado is doing, I don't know really what Colorado is doing. So that was probably my most important point. Was that it was a pretty express, strong statement against any reform. And I guess
that's correct.
so my preference would be just not to speak to it, and then if and when the issue comes up, we could discuss it. But that's the only one of real consequence that I wanted to raise.
Mr. President, I think the actual language was continuing laws and regulations that oppose the legislation of marijuana in California, and that had been recommended by the sheriff.
Right, I understand. And again, it's a very quickly changing environment. I certainly understand that some people would want to support that. I'm just saying for myself, I kind of don't know where I am on it, given how much is happening in other parts of the country. So that's the only major thing that I would raise.
And if we had comments on that particular item, we could put them in writing and. Okay.
All right. Now I think then I think that's a good suggestion by Supervisor Tissier. I will sit down with Connie or send an email, because the rest of my comments are straightforward. And everyone else can do the same if they so care, and we can just quickly approve at the next meeting.
So, Mr. President, the action then I would ask the board to take is to accept the report, item A, and C, which we did not discuss, was to support the Senate Bill 316, the Postal Service Protection Act.
Oh, thank you. And I think we do have a speaker on that, if you'd like to come to the rostrum. I just wish they wouldn't do stuff like that. I mean, I was lucky to find it.
Good afternoon. My name is John Beaumont. I'm the president of the letter carriers for the state of California. I'm also one of the co-members of the Postal Coalition of all 4 postal unions and management groups for the Postal Service. We've been working with all the counties and cities across the state to put the resolution that's before you in order to show that we have support from the cities and counties to continue to have 6-day delivery and door-to-door delivery for the Postal Service. The resolution is being put forward because of the current financial crisis the Postal Service is experiencing and the planned service cuts to your service that are currently being proposed to the United States Senate. Current Senate legislation will place the Postal Service on a path to failure by dismantling the Postal Service invaluable networks in order to pay for a misguided pre-funding mandate that they have, which no other federal agency has, and no public agency has this mandate. It will further hurt our communities, our seniors, our veterans by cutting Saturday delivery, thus driving away more business and volume. And a third of all mailers and small businesses say they still need Saturday service. Also, we are actually on the forefront of expanding our parcel industry, if you haven't noticed recently, to where we actually have same-day delivery that's going to be taking over the entire state of California 7 days a week. Now, moving to 5 days a week is going to critically hurt that. We are also one of the only companies that Amazon.com did not have to give any refunds to over the winter session. Our letter carriers went through the snow. Out here in California, we don't have that as much, but we do have the heat in a lot of areas. And we do have some rain. The legislation being proposed by the Senate will eliminate Saturday parcel delivery, and it doesn't even talk about Sunday parcel delivery, which is now being relied upon by the consumers who have their packages delivered on weekends as one of their biggest revenue generators the Postal Service has right now. The bill would also immediately end door-to-door. May I continue?
Yes, take a few minutes.
Thank you. The bill would immediately end door-to-door service for all United States businesses and would phase out home delivery of door-to-door for tens of millions of Americans over the next few years. All existing door delivery to millions of Americans would be discontinued in favor of what you've seen in some areas, which are called cluster boxes. And it will also continue to push for thousands of post offices to close their doors and no longer provide service to our community. Eliminating door delivery will deprive businesses of a delivery standard they have come to expect and further encourage with alternate delivery expectations. On another avenue, which I'm sure one of you is concerned about here, is vote by mail. Vote by mail, we have the largest vote by mail program in the United States. Now, we're not all vote by mail, but we're talking about numbers, and numbers we swamp Oregon and Washington. Now, you start taking away Saturday delivery, it's going to seriously hurt vote by mail. And we are starting to work and trying to work with the state legislature to at least do it for special elections to help save counties and cities money and be more proficient. The problem is that if we do away with this, it will hurt that program as well. The Senate is currently seriously debating implementing all of these service cuts to our communities without addressing the underlying problem crisis now facing, which I mentioned earlier, which is to mandate the pre-funding of its future health retirees benefits. The mandate goes out to 75 years in the future, and it saddles the Postal Service with $5.6 billion payment annually. Without this payment, we would have been $800 million in the black last year, thanks to our parcels and our continued service that we're working together in partnership with other businesses. We also have something called the last mile that we work with both FedEx and UPS to areas that are not profitable to them, but we're already delivering because we're going out there with the mail. And so they sign off in a lot of communities and the entire state of Alaska for us to go out. They drop the parcels off. They give us a small surcharge. They go out, that has both postmarks on it, and we deliver it out there. If you take us out of the mix, they will be the only ones charging. It will increase the cost to the public for them to get their parcels because they will have to go out there to do that. They'll still do that. So the resolution before you addresses all these concerns, and we would be happy if you guys would support this resolution and then send your support to Senator Boxer and Feinstein, who have not yet taken a position. Thank you so much for your time.
I thank you for attending the meeting.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for attending the meeting and for your patience. I know that, of course, it's at the very end of our session here. So, discussion or a motion?
Move to support.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. We, board member reports. We'll start with Mr. Horsley. We'll start on the left,
You know,
on the right.
there was an interesting article in a newspaper that had to do with Laura's Law, and it basically says Laura's Law doesn't work. The only randomized trial of compulsory outpatient treatment found that it takes 85 involuntary commitments to avoid one hospitalization and 238 commitments to avoid one rest. So it goes on to say other things about Laura's Law will lead mentally ill people to avoid any treatment, even voluntary, for fear that they will have to take medication against their will. Laura's Law will treat few compared to the number of people who avoid all treatment. So, you know, we always get this inflammatory, insulting comments about it. I just thought I'd give that comment.
Could you share that with us?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Pine.
Supervisor Groom.
I'd like to adjourn in memory of two people today. The first is Chuck Mink, a longtime Burlingame resident, but I asked Dave if I could adjourn in his memory. He served on the Burlingame Planning Commission for 25 years. He was an educator all of his life, and after he retired, he continued in education, working in the California Academy of Science and the Coyote Point Museum. He was a longtime senior focus board member, making life better for seniors and helping with health care for seniors. He's survived by his wife, Carol, and his children. He came to Burlingame in 1952, so he's lived here a very long time and made a lot of contributions to our county. And so I'd like to adjourn in Chuck Mink's memory. And I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Frank Baldonzi, a very long-time San Mateo businessman, ran a large public accounting firm, past president of San Mateo Rotary, served on numerous not-for-profit boards, always as the treasurer, and always as the filer of the tax returns and all of that. He just made such huge contributions. He's been ill for a long time, and I think mercifully was passed away over the weekend. And want to point, he leaves his devoted partner Jay Creighton and his wonderful, lovely mother Lydia to continue on with their lives. And Frank was just a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he'll really be missed.
Thank you, Carol. Supervisor Slocum.
Thank you. Just wanted to share with you the fact that last week I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Ravenswood Clinic, and Congresswoman Eshoo and Spear spoke along with many others, and we should thank our friends at Facebook. It turns out Mr. Zuckerberg at the last second gave $5 million to support that clinic. And the amazing thing that I took away from that is they're going to increase their capacity on an annual basis up to potentially being able to see 22,000 patients, which is pretty incredible. And it looks like a beautiful building. And kudos and a shout out to Luisa Boeda, who really had the vision to make that happen.
Thank you. A couple quick announcements. Once again, Disaster Preparedness Day will be on Saturday, June 7th. It's the 10th anniversary, and people will be able to get in again free for the first hour, so we encourage people. Also, the Older Driver Safety Seminar, Age Well, Drive Well, is this Thursday in Belmont at 9:30 a.m., so any of you that would like to age well and drive well, feel free to attend. We encourage it. Also, our Coalition on Safe Schools and Communities that Don and I are working on is going to be reconvening, I believe it's early May, to circle back with the community to let them know all the things we've done so far and the accomplishments and what's still on our plate. I'm not going to go into it because we're for lack of time. But I do have also some adjournment memories, and the first one is for Don Delbroy. He passed away December 27th after undergoing heart surgery. He attended Cappuccino High School, where he graduated in 1968. He worked most of his life in the construction business with his father, Ted, forming Ted Danson's Construction. He later joined the San Francisco Water Department, where he worked as a carpenter for over 20 years. His vocations were being a father and a grill master. True to his Italian heritage, he loved good wine, good food, and the company of his family and friends, and you could often see him strolling down Laurel Street in the downtown San Carlos. He was a wonderful individual. His son Joey worked for me for a while. Second adjourned memory is for Bill Hardwick. I don't know if many of you know he was a colonel, as a matter of fact. He was on the expo board with me years past. He was from Idaho, but then he also enlisted in the Army Air Corps, went to Oklahoma State and got a degree in architecture. He was in the Air Force Reserves. As I mentioned, he was a colonel and stationed at McClellan Air Force Base. He was also, as an architect, he worked in Missouri for a developer with Frisco Railroad, H. Ferguson Company in San Francisco, and also at Stanford University in Palo Alto, and retired in 1995 with Southern Pacific Railroad. Many of you also remember him as mayor of Belmont. He was on the Fair Board, as I mentioned. He also was an elder for the San Mateo Presbyterian Church. But 16 years ago, he moved with his wife, Noma, to Scotts Valley and was very involved in that community as well. My last adjourned memory is for Mark Guntrin. He's, I think some of you know Joe Guntrin, this is his brother. He also was born in San Francisco, went to St. Emilius Grammar School, on to St. Ignatius High School and St. Mary's College. He played football and rugby. He played football for SI and also for St. Mary's. He was a successful real estate broker and property manager, and he and his brother had a business together, a very successful business together. He was married in 1981 to his high school sweetheart, Janice Kelcheva, who passed away in 2003. My sympathies go out to all three of these families. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Tissier. I just wanted to note that I attended a fun event last weekend, which was the opening of Terminal 3E at the airport, the new United Terminal. They've basically a brand new terminal. And it's really amazing how much is happening at the airport in terms of terminal renovations, the new tower, the hotel. So I hope to have John Martin come and speak to the board, probably the second meeting in March, to update us on the airport's developments, which are substantial right now and very exciting. So I think we are prepared to adjourn into closed session. Yeah.
Yeah. You could practice before. Hey, retie your tie.
I'm gonna say, this is. All right, we are reconvening after our closed session. Mr. Byers, if you could report out on that.
Mr. President, the board met in closed session to discuss the 4 items identified on the agenda, and no final action was taken.
Thank you. Then we will adjourn the meeting.